When a kiss in front of the whole city can destroy a billion-dollar empire, Seraphina Vale never imagined that being kissed by the city's most dangerous man on the dance floor would be the beginning of her life. But that same night, she discovers she's just a pawn, a commodity her own father intends to sell to the most ruthless man in the underworld. Between bloody enemies, deadly conspiracies, and a dark, suffocating love, Seraphina must choose. Accept being a victim or become what they all fear most. Watch until the end, and comment the name of the city you're watching in to let me know how far this story has progressed. The champagne tasted like poison. Seraphina Vale stood at the edge of the Blackthorn Foundation Gala Ballroom and watched 300 of the city's wealthiest parasites pretend they gave a damn about orphaned children. The crystal chandeliers above threw fractured light across marble floors so polished they reflected every lie being told beneath them. Women in gowns worth more than most people earned in a year laughed too loud. Men in custom suits made deals that would ruin lives before dessert was served. And somewhere in that glittering crowd, her father was pretending she didn't exist. She'd worn the dark velvet gown specifically because Genevieve, her father's wife, never her stepmother, had suggested it in that razor-thin voice that wasn't really a suggestion at all. Something understated, dear. We wouldn't want you to draw attention. Translation: disappear. Be invisible. Don't embarrass the family by reminding everyone that Roland Vale couldn't keep his dick in his pants 23 years ago. Seraphina took another sip of the champagne and felt it burn down her throat. She'd been standing in the same corner for 40 minutes. Not one person had spoken to her. A few had glanced over, recognized her face from the society pages, Roland Vale's bastard daughter, the stain on the dynasty, and immediately looked away like she carried something contagious. She was used to it. Across the ballroom, Roland stood surrounded by admirers, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile wide and empty. He was telling some story, hands gesturing grandly, and the circle around him laughed right on cue. His legitimate children flanked him like accessories. Marcus, 28, his father's clone in ambition and cruelty, and Vivienne, 25, beautiful and cold as winter marble. Both of them had looked through Seraphina earlier like she was furniture. Genevieve appeared at Roland's elbow, her emerald gown catching the light. She touched his arm, whispered something, and he laughed again. The perfect couple. The perfect family. The empire built on shipping routes and offshore accounts and secrets buried so deep no one would ever find them. Except Seraphina had spent her whole life being one of those secrets. She finished her champagne and set the glass on a passing waiter's tray harder than she meant to. The sound made a woman nearby flinch, then glare at her like she'd committed murder. Seraphina stared back until the woman turned away. That was when she felt it, the shift in the room. It started at the entrance, a ripple of tension moving through the crowd like a cold wind. Conversations faltered, heads turned. Someone dropped a glass and it shattered against the marble, the sound sharp and final. Seraphina looked toward the grand staircase and saw him. He stood at the top of the stairs, completely still, and somehow that stillness was more terrifying than movement. Tall, dark-suited, mid-30s maybe, with the kind of face that didn't belong at charity galas. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that scanned the room with the systematic precision of a predator identifying prey. His presence carved a hole in the atmosphere. People were whispering, the name passed from mouth to mouth like a curse. Damien Novak. Seraphina had heard the stories. Everyone had. The man who built an empire in the shadows, the fixer who made problems disappear, companies, evidence, people. He didn't do business the way Roland did, with contracts and lawyers and polite extortion. Damien operated in the places where laws stopped mattering and violence became currency. Rumor said he'd walked into a boardroom in Prague once and walked out owning 3 factories and 2 politicians. Rumor said he'd buried a corrupt police commissioner under a warehouse in Singapore, and no one ever found enough pieces to identify. Rumor said a lot of things, but nobody contradicted him. Damien descended the stairs slowly, each step measured, and the crowd parted without him saying a word. He moved like physics didn't apply to him the same way it did to everyone else. A security guard started forward, thought better of it, and stepped back. Someone's phone clattered to the floor. Nobody picked it up. Roland's smile had frozen on his face. Damien stopped in the center of the ballroom, 30 feet from where Seraphina stood trying to remember how to breathe. He surveyed the room once more, clinical and thorough. and then his gaze locked onto something across the crowd. No, not something. Someone. Seraphina followed his line of sight, and her stomach dropped. Gregory Hammond, one of Roland's oldest business associates. Late 50s, divorced twice, the kind of man who stood too close and let his eyes crawl over women like he was already undressing them. He was moving through the crowd toward the balcony terrace, and he was heading straight for Seraphina. She'd been avoiding him all night. Hammond reached her before she could slip away, his smile wet and eager. "There you are. I've been looking for you." His breath smelled like scotch and something sour underneath. "Your father mentioned you might be here tonight. Thought we should get acquainted." Seraphina stepped back. Her spine hit the marble column behind her. "I don't think, Now don't be shy." Hammond moved closer, one hand rising like he planned to touch her face. "Roland and I have been discussing some exciting opportunities. I think you and I could be very good friends." Her skin crawled. She knew exactly what kind of opportunities men like Hammond discussed with men like Roland. The kind where daughters, especially inconvenient bastard daughters, became leverage. "I'm not interested." She tried to move sideways, but Hammond shifted to block her, still smiling that horrible wet smile. "Don't be difficult, sweetheart. Your father isn't here." Seraphina's voice came out harder than she intended. "And I'm not interested in being your friend." Hammond's expression changed. The smile stayed, but something ugly flickered behind his eyes. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, fingers digging in. "Listen, you little... Let go of her." The voice came from directly beside them, so close Seraphina flinched. She hadn't heard anyone approach, hadn't seen anyone move. But Damian Novak was standing 3 feet away, and the temperature in the immediate area had dropped 10 degrees. Hammond's grip loosened. He turned, tried to manufacture another smile. "Mr. Novak, I didn't see you, I said let go." Damian's voice was quiet, conversational. The kind of quiet that made you understand exactly how much worse things could get if you didn't comply immediately. Hammond released Seraphina's wrist like she'd burned him. The crowd had gone silent. Everyone was watching now, pretending not to watch, phones discreetly angled to capture whatever happened next. Damian looked at Hammond the way you'd look at something stuck to your shoe. "Walk away." Hammond opened his mouth, closed it. His face had gone red, but fear was winning over pride. He straightened his jacket, nodded once, and disappeared into the crowd fast enough that it qualified as running. Seraphina's wrist throbbed where Hammond's fingers had been. Her heart was slamming against her ribs so hard she could feel it in her throat. She looked up at Damian and found him already watching her, those dark eyes studying her face with the same systematic precision he'd used on the room. "Thank you," she managed. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "You didn't have to dance with me." It wasn't a question. Seraphina blinked. "What?" "Dance with me." Damian extended his hand. His expression hadn't changed, but there was something in the set of his jaw, the angle of his shoulders. A decision already made. Or stay here and let the next Hammond find you. Your choice. Somewhere across the ballroom, she could feel Roland watching. Genevieve, too. Marcus. Vivian. Every society vulture with a phone and a grudge. The orchestra had started playing again, a slow waltz that sounded like it was being performed underwater. Seraphina looked at Damian's outstretched hand. Every instinct she had screamed danger. This man was not safe. He was not kind. He was not someone who did things without reason or strategy or cold calculation. If he was offering her an escape, it was because he needed something. Men like Damian Novak didn't rescue bastard daughters out of the goodness of their hearts. But right now, he was the only one in this entire room who told Gregory Hammond to walk away. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, firm and warm, and he led her onto the dance floor with the same deliberate certainty he'd used descending the staircase. The crowd parted again. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Seraphina could see Roland's face across the ballroom, frozen in an expression she'd never seen before. Fear. Damian placed one hand on her waist and pulled her into the waltz. Up close, he was taller than she'd realized. His suit was impeccable but understated, expensive in a way that didn't need to announce itself. There was a scar along his jaw, faint and surgical, like someone had tried to cut his throat once and failed. They moved together across the marble floor, and Seraphina realized he danced the way he did everything else. Controlled. Precise. Like he'd calculated every step 3 moves ahead. "You're Roland Vale's daughter," he said. Not a question. Biologically, the word tasted bitter. Not officially. "I know." Of course he did. Men like Damien knew everything. The waltz turned them in a slow circle. Seraphina could feel every eye in the ballroom fixed on them. Her father was moving through the crowd now, cutting a path toward the dance floor, but Damien seemed completely unconcerned. "Why did you do that?" Seraphina asked quietly. "Intervene with Hammond." Damien looked down at her. "Because watching predators corner their prey offends me. You don't strike me as someone who gets offended easily." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "I'm selective about what irritates me." The orchestra swelled into the final movement. Damien turned them again, and Seraphina caught a glimpse of Roland's face, closer now, his expression carved from ice and fury. "Your father is going to reach us in approximately 15 seconds, Damien said calmly. "When he does, he'll try to separate us. Publicly, politely, but he'll make it clear that you're leaving with him." "I know." Seraphina's throat tightened. "That's how it always works." "Not tonight." She looked up sharply. "What?" Damien's hand tightened fractionally on her waist. "I'm going to kiss you now, in front of everyone in this room. When I do, your father's arrangement with Cristobal Torres collapses. His debt problem becomes exponentially worse, and you become far too visible for him to quietly marry off to Torres' psychopath son." He paused. "Do you understand what I'm saying?" Seraphina's mind was racing. Torres. The name was familiar, whispered in the same breath as trafficking, extortion, murder. "You're saying my father was planning to sell you to cover his debts?" "Yes." Damien's expression didn't change. Hammond was the intermediary. Tonight was the audition. The floor seemed to tilt. Seraphina's breath caught in her chest. "How do you—" "Because I make it my business to know what monsters do in the dark." Damien's eyes held hers. "Now decide. Do I kiss you and destroy his plan, or do I let you walk back to him and pretend you never knew?" Roland was 10 feet away, Genevieve beside him, both moving through the crowd with polite determination and absolute rage underneath. Seraphina's entire life had been about staying quiet, being invisible, not making waves. Every survival instinct she'd developed screamed at her to step away from Damien, go back to her corner, disappear the way she always had. But she thought about Hammond's hand on her wrist, her father's frozen smile, Genevieve's careful suggestion about the dark velvet gown. "Something understated, dear. Disappear." "Do it," Seraphina whispered. Damien pulled her closer, one hand moving to the back of her neck, and kissed her in the center of the Blackthorn Foundation Gala ballroom in front of 300 witnesses. The orchestra stopped mid-note. Conversations died. Someone gasped. Damien's mouth was warm and deliberate and absolutely terrifying because this wasn't performance or strategy. This was claiming, public, irrevocable. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were still on hers, and Seraphina realized she'd stopped breathing. Roland had stopped moving. His face had gone white. Damien released Seraphina slowly, then turned to face her father with the same cold stillness he'd carried down the staircase. "Vale," he said quietly, conversationally, like they were discussing weather. "I believe your transaction with Torres just became impossible. Send him my regards." Roland's mouth opened, closed. His hands were shaking. "You have no idea what you've just done." "I rarely do things without knowing exactly what I've done." Damien glanced at Seraphina. "She's leaving with me now. If you have objections, voice them quickly so I can ignore them." Genevieve stepped forward, her face a mask of aristocratic fury. "You cannot simply—" "I can." Damien looked at her with the same clinical disinterest he'd given Hammond. "And I am. If you'd like to make this a legal matter, I have 14 lawyers who specialize in making problems like you disappear, permanently." The silence in the ballroom was suffocating. Seraphina looked at her father, at Genevieve, at Marcus and Vivian standing frozen behind them, at 300 of the city's elite with their phones out, recording, broadcasting, turning this moment into something that could never be erased. She looked at Damien's extended hand, and she took it again. They walked out of the ballroom together, Security guards stepped aside. Guests parted. Someone started clapping, slow, deliberate, mocking, but Seraphina didn't turn to see who. She kept her eyes forward, her hand in Damien's, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The cold night air hit her face like a slap when they stepped outside. A black car was already waiting at the curb, engine running. Damien opened the door. "Get in," he said. Seraphina hesitated. The ballroom doors behind them were still open. She could go back. Apologize. Smooth things over the way she always had, or she could get in the car with the most dangerous man in the city and see what happened when you stopped being invisible. She got in. Damien slid in beside her and the door closed with a sound like a vault ceiling. The driver pulled away from the curb immediately, smooth and fast, and the blackthorn foundation disappeared behind them. Seraphina pressed her hand against the window and watched the glittering building shrink into the distance. Her wrist still throbbed where Hammond had grabbed her. Her mouth still tasted like Damien's kiss. Her entire world had just collapsed and rebuilt itself in the span of 5 minutes. She turned to look at him. Damien was watching the city pass outside his window, expression unreadable, completely calm. "What happens now?" Seraphina asked. Her voice came out quieter than she meant it to. Damien looked at her. "Now you decide if you want the truth about what your father's been planning, or if you'd prefer to go back to being the bastard daughter everyone ignores." "I want the truth." "Then I'll show you." He paused. "But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the girl who walked into that gala tonight won't be the same one who walks out of my car tomorrow. Understand?" Seraphina thought about her father's face. Hammond's wet smile, Genevieve's poisonous suggestions, 23 years of being erased. "I understand." Damien nodded once. "Good." The car turned onto a coastal highway, leaving the city lights behind. Ahead, darkness stretched toward the ocean cliffs where Seraphina knew Damien's estate overlooked the frozen water. She'd seen pictures in magazines, fortress, palace, prison, maybe all three. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. Then again, and again. Messages flooding in. She pulled it out and saw her father's name, Marcus's name, numbers she didn't recognize. She turned the phone off and dropped it back in her bag. Behind them, the city glittered like broken glass. And ahead, the darkness waited to swallow her whole. End of part 1. Seraphina has crossed the point of no return. But the real war is just beginning. What secrets is Damien hiding? What will she discover about her mother's death? And when Roland retaliates, will she survive the aftermath? The estate appeared out of the darkness like something from a nightmare dressed in stone and glass. Seraphina watched it emerge through the car window as they wound up the coastal road. A sprawling fortress perched on black cliffs overlooking an ocean she could hear but not see. Floodlights illuminated sections of the exterior in harsh white pools, turning the architecture into something skeletal. Guard towers, cameras, walls topped with things that might have been decorative ironwork or might have been designed to keep people from climbing over or climbing out. The car passed through 2 security checkpoints without slowing. Armed men in dark tactical gear watched from reinforced booths, faces blank, weapons visible. At the second gate, Seraphina saw something that made her breath catch. A man standing perfectly still in the shadows. And when the headlights swept past him, she caught the edge of a shoulder holster and eyes that tracked their vehicle with the mechanical precision of a surveillance camera. "How many people work here?" she asked. Damien didn't look away from his phone. "Enough." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting tonight." The car stopped in front of massive double doors that looked like they belonged on a cathedral. The driver got out, opened Damien's door, then Seraphina's. Cold wind hit her face hard enough to sting. The ocean roared somewhere below the cliffs, invisible and furious. Damien stepped out and waited. Seraphina climbed out after him, her heels unsteady on the gravel drive. The velvet gown that had made her invisible at the gala now made her feel exposed. Ridiculous, like she'd worn a costume to a knife fight. The doors opened before they reached them. A woman stood in the entrance hall, late 40s maybe, silver hair pulled back severe, wearing a charcoal suit that looked tailored to hide weapons. Her eyes moved over Seraphina with the same clinical assessment the guards had used. "Ms. Vale," she said. No warmth, just acknowledgement. "I'm Catherine Reeves, head of security. Mr. Novak informed me you'd be staying with us." Staying, not visiting. Seraphina glanced at Damien, but his expression gave away nothing. Catherine continued without waiting for a response. Your belongings will be retrieved from your apartment tomorrow. For tonight, we've prepared the East Wing guest suite. Meals are available at any hour. The grounds are secure, but I'd recommend staying inside until you've been properly briefed on the security protocols. Briefed? Seraphina's voice came out sharper than she intended. I'm not a prisoner. Catherine's expression didn't change. No, ma'am, you're a guest. But guests who wander into restricted areas tend to get shot by automated defense systems, so I'd appreciate your cooperation. The casual mention of being shot knocked the fight out of Seraphina's throat. Damien moved past them both into the entrance hall. Catherine, have Anders bring the Torres files to my office. All of them, including the sealed transcripts from Singapore. Yes, sir. And send word to Kozlov that I want surveillance on Roland Vale doubled immediately. I want to know every call he makes, every person he meets, every dollar he moves. Already done. Kozlov anticipated the order after what happened at the gala. Catherine allowed herself a thin smile. The footage is everywhere, by the way. You're trending on 4 platforms. Good. Damien shrugged out of his jacket and handed it to someone Seraphina he hadn't noticed standing in the shadows. A young man who took the jacket and disappeared like smoke. Make sure it stays visible. I want Torres to see it before his morning coffee. Catherine nodded once and walked away, her footsteps silent on the marble floor. Seraphina stood in the entrance hall and tried to process what she'd just heard. The space around her was massive, vaulted ceilings, dark wood, art that probably cost more than her entire education. But it didn't feel like a home, it felt like a command center. Everything was positioned with purpose, every angle calculated. Come with me, Damien said. He didn't wait to see if she followed. Seraphina hurried after him through a series of hallways that all looked identical. Dark walls, recessed lighting, doors that were probably locked or guarded, or both. Her heels clicked against the floor too loud. She felt like an intruder. Like any second someone would realize she didn't belong here and escort her out at gunpoint. Damien stopped at a heavy oak door, pressed his palm against a biometric scanner, and pushed it open. The office inside was exactly what she expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the black ocean, a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of obsidian, screens mounted on one wall showing security feeds from around the estate, gates, hallways, the perimeter, a bar cart in the corner with bottles that probably cost more than her rent. Damien poured himself 2 fingers of something amber and drank half of it in one swallow. Seraphina closed the door behind her and stood there, her arms wrapped around herself against a cold that had nothing to do with temperature. Sit, Damien said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs facing his desk. I'd rather stand. Sit anyway. What I'm about to tell you is going to make your legs stop working. Something in his tone made her obey. She sank into the chair and immediately felt smaller. Damien stayed standing, one hand still holding his glass, the other braced against the edge of his desk. Your father owes Cristobal Torres $4.3 billion, he said. No preamble, no softening. The debt originated 7 years ago when Vale Holdings needed emergency liquidity to cover losses from a shipping route collapse in Southeast Asia. Torres provided the capital through a network of shell companies. The terms were generous at first. Seraphina's mouth had gone dry. $4 billion? 4.3. The interest structure was designed to seem manageable initially, then compound exponentially after the 5th year. Standard predatory lending. By the time your father understood what he'd signed, he was already drowning. Damien took another drink. 6 months ago, Torres called in the debt. All of it. Your father couldn't pay. So Torres wanted... Seraphina couldn't finish the sentence. Collateral. Yes. Damien's eyes were flat. Torres has a son, Vicente. 29 years old, 3 arrests for aggravated assault that his father made disappear, suspected in the deaths of at least 2 women who tried to leave him. He's the kind of man who hurts people because he enjoys it. The room tilted. Seraphina gripped the arms of the chair. And my father was going to, marry you to Vicente to settle the debt. The arrangement was finalized 2 weeks ago. Tonight was supposed to be the introduction. Hammond was there to facilitate, make sure you were appropriate. The word made her skin crawl. How do you know all this? Her voice was barely a whisper. Damien set his glass down and moved to the screens on the wall. He touched something and one of them changed. Surveillance footage, black and white, time-stamped 3 weeks ago. 2 men in a private dining room, Roland and someone else. Dark-haired, expensive suit, a face that looked carved from violence. Torres. Damien unmuted the audio. Roland's voice came through the speakers, tinny but clear. Assured me she won't be a problem. She's been trained to stay quiet. Torres laughed. It sounded like gravel scraping concrete. Your bastard daughter. How convenient that you kept her around. I didn't keep her around. Her mother did that before she died. But now, Roland paused. Now she's useful. Seraphina stopped breathing. Vicente will appreciate her, Torres continued. He likes them young, frightened, easier to control. She'll do what she's told. Roland's tone was casual, discussing livestock. She always has. Damien turned off the footage. The silence in the office was suffocating. Seraphina couldn't feel her hands, couldn't feel anything except a roaring emptiness where her chest used to be. She'd known her father didn't love her. She'd lived 23 years knowing that. But hearing him sell her like property, hearing him describe her as useful, I'm going to be sick, she whispered. Damien moved fast. He had a trash can in front of her before she could stand. Seraphina doubled over and vomited champagne and bile and the remains of whatever innocence she'd been stupid enough to carry into tonight. Her whole body shook. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. When she finally sat back, Damien handed her a glass of water. She rinsed her mouth, spit into the trash can, and drank the rest. Her hands were trembling so badly water sloshed over the rim. Why? Her voice came out wrecked. Why did you show me that? Because you said you wanted the truth. Damien took the glass from her before she dropped it. And because you need to understand what you're walking away from. If I hadn't intervened tonight, you'd be on a plane to Torres's compound in Colombia within the week. Once you were there, no one was coming for you. Not the police, not your family, no one. Seraphina looked up at him. Why did you intervene? Because I've been investigating your father for 18 months. Damien pulled a folder from his desk drawer and dropped it in front of her. Vale Holdings has been laundering money for Torres's trafficking network through international shipping routes. Weapons, drugs, people. The legitimate business is a front. I have evidence linking Roland to at least 4 major trafficking operations across 3 continents. The folder sat there like a bomb. Seraphina stared at it. You're saying my father is a monster who happens to own cargo ships, yes. Then why haven't you gone to the authorities? Damien laughed. It was a harsh sound, completely devoid of humor. Because half the authorities are on Torres's payroll and the other half are too terrified to act. You don't take down an empire like this with warrants and courtrooms. You dismantle it piece by piece until there's nothing left but ashes. And where do I fit into your plan? You were supposed to be leverage. Damien leaned against his desk, arms crossed. A way to destabilize Roland's arrangement with Torres, force him into making mistakes. But then I watched Hammond corner you and realized you didn't know. You had no idea what you were. What am I? The match. His eyes held hers. The thing they thought they could control, but now you're burning in the wrong direction. Seraphina's mind was racing. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She wanted to go back to the gala and tear her father apart in front of everyone who'd ever looked through her like she was invisible. Instead, she opened the folder. Inside were photographs, documents, financial records, shipping manifests with notes scrawled in margins, cargo descriptions that made her stomach turn. Port authorities paid off, border officials bribed, and buried in the middle, a hospital bill from 12 years ago. Elena Mercer. Her mother. Treatment denied due to outstanding balance. Seraphina's hands froze. What is this? Your mother's medical records. Damien's voice was quieter now. Elena was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer when you were 11. She should have received treatment immediately. Instead, your father's wife used her connections to freeze Elena's trust fund and block her access to the family's health insurance. The words punched through Seraphina like bullets. Genevieve visited your mother in the hospital, Damien continued. There's a record of it, 2 days before Elena died. The nurses logged it as a family visit, but Elena's condition deteriorated rapidly afterward. Stress-induced cardiac arrest. Seraphina couldn't breathe. The room was tilting again. What did Genevieve say to her? I don't know, But whatever it was, it killed her. The folder slipped from Seraphina's hands and scattered across the floor. Photographs of her mother's face, sunken, hollow, dying. Bills marked overdue in red. A death certificate with a cause of death that was technically accurate but completely wrong. Her mother hadn't died from cancer. She'd been murdered by neglect and cruelty and secrets. "Why are you showing me this?" Seraphina's voice broke on the last word. "Because you deserve to know what they took from you." Damien crouched in front of her chair, eye level now. "And because when this is over, when Torres and your father and everyone involved in this nightmare is buried, you're going to have to decide what kind of person you want to be. The girl who stays quiet or the woman who burns it all down?" Seraphina looked at him through tears she couldn't hold back anymore. "You don't know me." "I know enough." He stood, offered her his hand. "You took my hand twice tonight, once in the ballroom, once in the car. Both times you knew it was dangerous and you did it anyway. That's not the behavior of someone who stays quiet." She stared at his outstretched hand. Everything in her life had led to this moment. Every humiliation, every whispered insult, every time her father looked through her like she didn't exist. Every night she'd spent wondering why her mother died alone. Seraphina took Damien's hat and let him pull her to her feet. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you rest. Tomorrow, we start planning." "Planning what?" "How to destroy your father before Torres destroys both of you." Seraphina didn't sleep. The guest suite Catherine had prepared was beautiful in the way weapons were beautiful. Sleek, functional, designed to intimidate. King bed with black silk sheets. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean cliffs. A bathroom with marble surfaces and a shower that could fit 6 people. And locks on the inside of the door that wouldn't have stopped anyone if they really wanted in. She'd tried to sleep. Laid in the enormous bed and stared at the ceiling while her mind replayed the footage of her father selling her, Genevieve visiting her dying mother, Hammond's hand on her wrist. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Torres's face, heard his voice. He likes them young, frightened. At 3 a.m, she gave up. She showered until the water ran cold, then dressed in the clothes someone had left folded on a chair. Black jeans, a soft gray sweater, boots that actually fit. Her gown from the gala hung in the closet like evidence of a crime. Seraphina left the suite and walked the hallways. The estate was quieter at night, but not silent. She could hear the ocean, footsteps on floors above and below her, the hum of security systems. Somewhere distant, voices speaking in a language she didn't recognize. She found herself in what looked like a library, walls lined with books that probably hadn't been read in decades. Leather furniture arranged around a fireplace that had been converted to gas. Through the windows, she could see the grounds lit by floodlights, guards making their rounds like clockwork. "Can't sleep?" Seraphina spun. Catherine stood in the doorway, still in her charcoal suit, still looking like she could kill someone with her bare hands and be home in time for dinner. "I didn't mean to intrude," Seraphina said. "You're not. This part of the house is accessible to guests." Catherine moved into the room and poured herself coffee from a carafe Seraphina hadn't noticed sitting on the sideboard. "Most people can't sleep their first night here. Too quiet, or too loud, depending on your perspective." "How long have you worked for Damien?" 12 years. Catherine took a sip of her coffee. "I was private security for a diplomat in Berlin. Things went sideways during an extraction. My team got killed. Damien pulled me out before the building collapsed and offered me a job." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Catherine smiled faintly. "He has a habit of collecting people who are useful. Or dangerous. Sometimes both." "Which one am I?" "Haven't decided yet." Catherine studied her over the rim of her cup. "You don't look like your father." "Thank God for that." "You look like your mother. I saw the photographs in the file Damien showed you. Same eyes. Same way of holding yourself like you're ready to run or fight depending on which option presents itself first." Seraphina's throat tightened. "You knew about what happened to her." "I knew enough. Damien doesn't keep secrets from me." Catherine set her cup down. "Your mother fought for you, right up until the end. Genevieve tried to make her disappear, cut her off from everything, and Elena still found ways to make sure you were fed, clothed, educated. She died protecting you from people who wanted you erased. Then she failed." The words came out bitter. "Because I spent my whole life being erased anyway." "No." Catherine said quietly. You spent your whole life being hidden. There's a difference. Hidden things can be found. Erased things are gone forever. Something in Seraphina's chest cracked open. Catherine moved toward the door, paused. Damien's plan is going to get violent. You should know that now. Torres doesn't negotiate. Roland won't surrender quietly. When this starts, people are going to die. If you're not ready for that, tell him tomorrow and he'll get you somewhere safe. And if I am ready? Catherine looked back at her. Then you're more like your mother than I thought. She left. Seraphina stood alone in the library and watched the guards patrol the grounds below. Her reflection stared back from the dark windows, hollow-eyed, exhausted, wearing someone else's clothes, but alive. For the first time in her life, visibly, undeniably alive. Morning came with fog rolling in from the ocean. Seraphina found Damien in a room that looked like it belonged to the military. Long conference table, screens covering one entire wall, maps marked with pins and annotations. A man she didn't recognize stood beside him, mid-50s, gray beard, the kind of face that had seen violence and learned to speak its language fluently. Kozlov, Damien said without looking up from the tablet in his hands. This is Seraphina Vale. Kozlov nodded once. Ms. Vale. What is this? Seraphina gestured at the screens. War room. Damien set the tablet down. We're tracking your father's movements, Torres's communications, financial transfers between their networks. As of 6 this morning, Roland made 17 phone calls, 13 to lawyers, 3 to offshore accounts, 1 to Torres. What did he say? That you've been kidnapped and he wants you returned immediately. Damien allowed himself a thin smile. Torres told him to solve his own problems. So the arrangement is broken. For now, but Torres isn't the forgiving type. He'll retaliate against Roland for losing control of the collateral. And when he does, Roland will try to offer him something else. What else does he have? 2 legitimate children, a shipping empire worth billions on paper, and leverage over at least 40 politicians across 6 countries. Damien pulled up a new screen, organizational charts showing connections like a spider's web. Torres will take whatever he can get, but what he really wants is control of Vale's shipping routes. That's the prize. You were just the down payment. Seraphina stared at the web of connections. So what do? We make it impossible for your father to give Torres anything. Damien turned to face her fully, starting with freezing every asset Roland has access to. Kozlov has already initiated the first wave. Anonymous tips to financial regulators, audits triggered through shell accounts we control, injunctions filed under aliases. By noon today, Vale Holdings will be locked in legal battles on 4 continents. That won't stop him. No. But it'll slow him down. Damien gestured to another screen. While he's fighting those fires, we're going to steal his credibility. Every dirty secret he's buried, every bribe he's paid, every trafficking route he's enabled, it's all going public. You'll destroy him. Yes. Seraphina should have felt something, guilt maybe, hesitation, but all she felt was cold fury. I want to help. Damien studied her for a long moment. This isn't a game. Once we start, there's no stopping. People loyal to your father will come after you. Torres's people will come after both of us. You'll be hunted. I'm already hunted. Seraphina moved closer to the screens. My father sold me. Torres wanted to own me. They've been hunting me my entire life. I just didn't know it yet. Kozlov spoke for the first time, his voice gravelly. She's got the eyes for it. The eyes for what? Seraphina asked. War. Kozlov smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. Most people flinch when things get violent. You're not flinching, you're leaning in. Damien's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then at Kozlov. Torres just moved 3 encrypted communications through the Singapore server. Route them to Petrov for analysis. Already done. The phone buzzed again. This time Damien's expression changed, something dark flickering across his face. What? Seraphina asked. Your brother Marcus just arrived at the front gate. He's demanding to see you. The room went silent. Seraphina's pulse spiked. Marcus is here? With 2 cars full of private security. Damien pulled up the gate camera feed. Sure enough, There was Marcus, standing beside a black SUV, surrounded by 6 men in tactical gear, his face carved from rage. "Don't let him in," Seraphina said immediately. "I wasn't planning to." Damien zoomed in on Marcus's face. "But he's not leaving quietly. He's already threatened legal action and called the police." "The police? Who won't respond because half of them are on my payroll?" Damien looked at her. "But this is your decision. I can send him away, or I can let him in under controlled circumstances. Limited time, supervised. If you want answers from him, now's your chance." Seraphina's hands clenched into fists. She thought about Marcus standing beside Roland at the gala, looking through her like she was furniture. Thought about every family dinner where she'd been excluded, every holiday where she'd been erased. "Let him in," she said. "But I talked to him alone." "Absolutely not." Damien's tone left no room for argument. "If Marcus is here, it's because Roland sent him, which means this is either a retrieval attempt or reconnaissance. Either way, you're not facing him without backup." "I don't need—" "Yes, you do." Damien's eyes held hers. "You're not in your father's house anymore. You're in mine. And in my house, people don't get hurt because they were too proud to accept help." The words hit harder than Seraphina expected. She nodded once. "Kozlov, bring Marcus to the South Terrace," Damien said. "Full security sweep. No weapons past the entrance hall. And make sure he knows that if he tries anything stupid, he won't make it back to his car." Kozlov grinned. "With pleasure. Back." Marcus looked like their father. Seraphina saw it the moment he stepped onto the terrace. Same sharp jawline, same cold eyes, same way of holding himself like he owned every room he walked into. He wore an expensive suit and an expression that said he'd rather be anywhere else. 2 of Damien's security team flanked him. Catherine stood by the terrace entrance, arms crossed, radiating threat. Seraphina sat at the wrought iron table and forced herself not to react. Marcus stopped 3 feet away. "Seraphina." "Marcus, you need to come home." "I don't have a home. I have an apartment Roland pays for so he can pretend I don't exist." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Father's concerned about you." "Father sold me to a psychopath to cover his debts. His concern is a little late." "That's not—" Marcus stopped, took a breath, tried again. "You don't understand the situation." "I understand perfectly." Seraphina leaned back in her chair. "The family is drowning in debt. Torres called it in. Roland panicked and decided his bastard daughter was expendable. Did I miss anything?" "You're being dramatic." "I'm being accurate." Marcus moved closer. Catherine shifted, one hand drifting toward her hip. Marcus froze. "This man you're with," he said, voice dropping. "Damien Novak. You know what he is, right? What he does?" "Yes." "And you're okay with that?" "More okay than I was with being sold like property." Marcus's expression cracked, just for a second. Something that might have been guilt flickered across his face before the mask came back. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. How was it supposed to happen? The arrangement with Torres, it was going to be a marriage contract, legal, binding, but you would have been protected. Vicente was supposed to— Supposed to what? Seraphina stood up so fast her chair scraped against the stone. Supposed to hit me gently? Supposed to kill me slowly? What exactly was the acceptable level of violence in this arrangement, Marcus? I didn't know about Vicente's history. You're lying. The words came out flat, cold. You knew. You all knew. You just didn't care because it wasn't happening to Vivian. Marcus flinched. Is that what Father sent you here to do? Seraphina continued. Convince me to come back so he can smooth things over with Torres? Find another way to package me up and ship me off? He sent me to bring you home safely. Safely? Seraphina laughed, and it sounded wrong even to her own ears. You want to know what happened to our mother, Marcus? His expression went carefully blank. Elena died of cancer. Elena died because Genevieve blocked her medical treatment and terrorized her in the hospital. Seraphina pulled out her phone, opened the photos she'd taken of the documents in Damien's folder. Here. Medical bills. Trust fund freeze orders. Hospital visitor logs. Your mother killed mine and Father let it happen. She shoved the phone toward him. Marcus looked at the screen. His face went white. That's not— She wouldn't— She would. She did. Seraphina's voice was shaking now. And you all benefited from it. Every inheritance that should have gone to my mother went to you instead. Every public appearance where I was excluded protected your perfect family image. You built your life on her grave and never once asked questions. Marcus set the phone down like it burned him. Seraphina, I didn't know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. Silence stretched between them. Damien appeared in the terrace doorway, coffee in hand, watching the exchange with clinical interest. Marcus saw him, and his expression hardened again. This isn't over. Yes, Seraphina said quietly. It is. Go back to father. Tell him I'm not coming back. Tell him that if he tries to force me, I'll give every document I have to the federal prosecutors and let them tear Vale Holdings apart brick by brick. You destroy the family? The family destroyed itself. She met his eyes. I'm just making sure everyone sees the corpse. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then at Damien, then back at Seraphina. You've changed, he said finally. No, I just stopped pretending I hadn't. Catherine escorted Marcus off the terrace. Seraphina heard his footsteps retreat through the house, heard car doors slam, engines start. When the sound faded, she realized she was shaking. Damien moved beside her, silent.
I didn't know I could do that, Seraphina whispered. Yes, you did. You just needed permission to stop being polite. She looked up at him. What happens when Roland realizes I'm serious?
He'll retaliate, probably within the next 24 hours. Damien finished his coffee, set the cup down. Which is why we're accelerating the timeline. Kozlov just confirmed Vale Holdings is being audited by 3 regulatory agencies as of this morning. The stock is already dropping. By market close today, Roland will have lost approximately $2 billion in paper value. And Torres? Torres is watching, waiting. When Roland starts to collapse, he'll move in to claim whatever's left. Damien's eyes met hers. That's when we hit him. How? By giving federal investigators everything we have on his trafficking network. Routes, contacts, financial records. Once that goes public, every government on 3 continents will freeze his assets simultaneously. And then what? Damien smiled. It was the coldest expression Seraphina had ever seen. Then we watch both empires burn. Before Seraphina could respond, an explosion shook the entire estate. The windows rattled. Alarms screamed to life. Catherine's voice came through overhead speakers, controlled but urgent. Breach at the north perimeter. All personnel to defensive positions. This is not a drill. Damien moved fast. He grabbed Seraphina's arm and pulled her toward the interior of the house. What's happening? She gasped.
Torres, Damien's voice was grim. He's not waiting. He's coming for us now. Gunfire erupted somewhere outside. Glass shattered. Men were shouting in languages Seraphina didn't understand, and through it all one thought crystallized in her mind with perfect, terrifying clarity. She'd declared war on monsters. Now the monsters were fighting back.
The first bullet shattered the terrace window 3 feet from Seraphina's head. She hit the ground before her brain registered the sound. Pure instinct, muscles moving faster than thought. Glass rained down around her in 1,000 glittering pieces. Above her, Damien had drawn a gun from somewhere inside his jacket, his body angled toward the breach point, every muscle coiled. Move, he snapped. Seraphina scrambled to her feet, her hands bleeding from the glass. Damien grabbed her wrist and yanked her through the terrace doors into the main house. Behind them, the wall where she'd been standing exploded inward as another round of gunfire tore through the stone. The hallway erupted into controlled chaos. Security personnel flooded past them in tactical formation, weapons drawn, moving with the precision of people who'd drilled for exactly this scenario. Catherine appeared from a side corridor, a rifle in her hands, her face completely calm. North perimeter breach confirmed, she said, her voice cutting through the alarm sirens. 6 hostiles, possibly more. Heavy weapons. They came through the cliffside access. Someone gave them the entry codes. Damien's expression went arctic. Inside job. Has to be. No one gets those codes without clearance. Catherine fired a glance at Seraphina. Get her to the safe room. Now. No. Damien's grip on Seraphina's wrist tightened. If we have a leak, the safe room location is compromised. We go to the vault. Catherine's eyes widened fractionally. Sir, the vault isn't designed for... I know what it's designed for. Damien was already moving, pulling Seraphina with him down a different corridor away from the sounds of combat. Initiate full lockdown. No one in or out until we identify the breach. Copy that. Catherine disappeared back into the firefight. Damien hauled Seraphina through a maze of hallways she didn't recognize, past rooms she'd never seen, deeper into the estate's interior. The gunfire behind them grew muffled, then distant. Her heart was slamming so hard against her ribs she thought they might crack. Blood from her cut hands left a trail on the walls. Damien, what's happening? Torres sent a kill team. His voice was clipped, mechanical, which means someone told him exactly when and where to strike. You think one of your people— I don't think. I know. He stopped at a heavy steel door hidden behind what looked like a wine cellar panel, pressed his palm to another biometric scanner. Someone in my organization just tried to get us both killed. We find out who, or we're dead before sunrise. The steel door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Beyond it was a staircase descending into darkness. Damien flipped a switch and fluorescent lights flickered on, illuminating concrete walls and a reinforced door at the bottom. The vault. Seraphina could feel the weight of the earth above them, the sense of being buried alive. They descended fast. The door at the bottom required 3 separate authentication methods: palm scan, retinal scan, and a 12-digit code Damien entered so quickly his fingers blurred. The lock disengaged with a sound like bones breaking. Inside, the vault was exactly what she expected. A room carved from solid concrete, lined with servers, weapons racks, emergency supplies. Monitors covered one wall, showing feeds from every camera on the estate. On the screens, she could see the battle unfolding in real time. Damien's security team exchanging fire with attackers in black tactical gear, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness, bodies falling. Damien locked the vault door behind them and immediately went to the monitors. His hands flew across the keyboard, pulling up different camera angles, zooming in on faces. 6 hostiles, he muttered. All professionals, military-grade weapons. They knew exactly where the blind spots were in our perimeter. Seraphina watched the screens, her stomach churning. On one monitor, a guard she didn't know took 3 rounds to the chest and went down. On another, Catherine led a counter-assault team through the greenhouse, moving like a ghost. How long can your people hold them? She asked. Long enough. Damien's jaw was tight. Catherine's team is better trained than anything Torres can field, but that's not the problem. Then what is? He pulled up a different screen, communication logs, encrypted messages, data transfers. His finger stabbed at a series of timestamps. These. Someone's been feeding Torres intelligence on our security protocols for 3 weeks. Guard rotations, camera placements, entry codes, everything he needed to plan this. Seraphina moved closer. The messages were brief, clinical. Coordinates, times, blind spot locations. Whoever had sent them knew Damien's operation inside and out. Who has access to this information? She asked. 12 people. All of them have been with me for years. All of them vetted personally. Damien pulled up personnel files, photos flashing across the screen. Seraphina recognized Catherine, Kozlov, a few others she'd seen around the estate. One of them is a traitor. Or it's someone else entirely. No. Damien's voice was flat. This level of detail requires daily access to our systems. It's not an outside hack. It's someone in this house. On the monitors, the firefight was intensifying. One of the attackers went down, then another. But Torres's men were pushing forward, using the greenhouse as cover, getting closer to the main building. Seraphina's hands were still bleeding. She grabbed gauze from a medical kit on one of the shelves and wrapped them, watching the screens over her shoulder. What do we do? We wait for Catherine to neutralize the threat. Then we find the rat. Damien opened a different program, started running through security footage from the past 72 hours. Someone made a mistake. They always do. We just have to find it. But as the footage played, something caught Seraphina's attention. A figure moving through the East Wing corridor, the same corridor where her guest suite was located. Timestamp, 3 hours before the attack. Stop, she said. Go back. Damien reversed the footage. There. A man in maintenance coveralls carrying a toolbox, walking with the easy confidence of someone who belonged. He stopped outside Seraphina's suite, glanced around, then produced a key card and entered. Who is that? Seraphina's pulse spiked. Damien zoomed in on the man's face. Petrov, communications specialist. Been with me for 8 years. His expression darkened. What the hell was he doing in your suite? I don't know. I've never seen him before. Damien fast-forwarded. Petrov emerged from the suite 6 minutes later, no longer carrying the toolbox. He walked away, disappeared around a corner, and the footage ended. He left something in your room. Damien was already moving toward the vault door. Listening device, camera, maybe worse. Where is he now? Damien pulled up live feeds, searching. Communications hub, 3rd floor. His hand went to the gun at his hip. Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone except me or Catherine. You can't go alone. I'm not leaving you exposed while there's a firefight happening upstairs. Damien's eyes locked onto hers. If I don't come back in 20 minutes, there's an emergency tunnel behind that weapons rack. Follows the coastline for 2 miles, comes out in a fishing village. Catherine knows about it. She'll find you. Damien. He kissed her, hard and fast and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the shape of her mouth. When he pulled back, his expression was raw. If this goes wrong, he said quietly, everything in this vault is yours. The files, the evidence, all of it. Finish what we started. Then he was gone, the vault door sealing behind him with a sound like a coffin closing. Seraphina stood alone in the concrete tomb and watched the monitors. On screen, Damien moved through the estate like a predator. Seraphina tracked him across multiple camera feeds, through corridors, up staircases, past the ongoing firefight without breaking stride. Catherine saw him, shouted something Seraphina couldn't hear, but Damien kept moving. He reached the communications hub, a room filled with servers and workstations, and found Petrov sitting at a console. Petrov looked up, saw Damien, and smiled. That smile told Seraphina everything. Damien crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed Petrov by the throat, and slammed him against the wall hard enough that the monitors shook. Petrov didn't fight back, just kept smiling, even as Damien's gun pressed against his temple. Seraphina couldn't hear the conversation, but she could read Damien's body language. Rage, betrayal, the gun shaking fractionally in his hand. Then Petrov said something that made Damien freeze. The gun lowered, just an inch, just enough. Petrov moved. He had a knife, thin, barely visible on the cameras, and he drove it into Damien's side with surgical precision. Damien staggered back, blood blooming across his shirt. Petrov lunged again, but this time Damien caught his wrist, twisted, and the crack of breaking bone was probably audible even without audio. Petrov screamed. Damien shot him twice in the chest. The traitor collapsed. Damien stood over the body, one hand pressed to his bleeding side, chest heaving. Then he turned and looked directly at the camera, directly at Seraphina. His lips moved. She couldn't hear the words, but she could read them. Stay there. He stumbled out of the communications hub and disappeared from view. Seraphina's hands were numb. She stared at the empty room, at Petrov's body, at the blood pooling on the floor. On other monitors, the firefight was ending, Torres's men retreating, Catherine's team pursuing. The estate was secure, but Damien was bleeding. She waited, counted the seconds, watched the feeds for any sign of him. 5 minutes passed. 10. The vault door opened. Seraphina spun, her heart lurching, but it wasn't Damien. It was Kozlov. The older man stepped inside, his face grim, his hands empty. Behind him, 2 security guards she didn't recognize flanked the entrance. Ms. Vale, Kozlov said quietly, we need to talk. Something in his tone made her step back. Where's Damien? Medical wing. Catherine's with him. The wound isn't fatal, but he's lost blood. He'll need surgery. Kozlov moved further into the vault, his eyes sweeping over the monitors. He asked me to secure you until he's stabilized. Then why do you look like you're about to arrest me? Kozlov's expression didn't change. Because we found something in Petrov's workstation. Communication logs, financial transfers, all pointing to a second operative inside our organization. Seraphina's blood went cold. Who? That's what we need to determine. Kozlov gestured to the guards. Standard protocol. Everyone with access to sensitive information gets interviewed, including you. You think I'm... She couldn't even finish the sentence. I've been here 2 days, which is exactly when the intelligence leaks started accelerating.
Kozlov's voice was calm, almost gentle. I'm not accusing you, Ms. Vale, but we need to eliminate possibilities. You understand? She didn't understand. Not really. But the guards were blocking the door and Kozlov had a gun on his hip and everything in her screamed danger. Fine, she said. Interview me.
Upstairs, in a more comfortable setting. I'm comfortable here. I insist. The guards moved closer. Seraphina looked at the monitors, at the feeds showing the estate settling into post-battle quiet. Looked at the weapons rack Damien had mentioned, the emergency tunnel hidden behind it. Looked at Kozlov's face and saw something she didn't trust. I want to see Damien first, she said. After the interview. Now, Kozlov sighed. Ms. Vale, please don't make this difficult. One of the guards pulled out zip ties. Understanding crashed over Seraphina like ice water. This wasn't an interview. This was an arrest, or worse. She lunged for the weapons rack. The guards moved faster. One caught her arm, yanked her back. The other had the zip ties around her wrists before she could scream. She fought anyway, kicked, bit, slammed her head backward into someone's face and heard a satisfying crunch. But there were two of them, and they'd done this before. They forced her to her knees. Kozlov stood over her, his expression genuinely regretful. I'm sorry, truly. But you're worth more to Torres alive than dead, and right now that's all the leverage we have left. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. You're working for Torres. I'm working for survival, Kozlov crouched in front of her. Damien's crusade against your father, against Torres. It was always going to end badly. I tried to warn him, tried to convince him to take Torres's buyout offer 6 months ago. He refused, so I made alternate arrangements. You sold him out. I ensured I'd be on the winning side when this war ended. Kozlov stood. Petrov was my partner. We've been feeding Torres information for weeks. Tonight was supposed to be a clean extraction, grab you during the chaos, deliver you to Torres, collect our payment. But Damien was faster than we anticipated. Petrov's dead. So now I adapt. Seraphina's mind was racing. Catherine knows she'll kill you. Catherine is currently performing emergency surgery on Damien in a medical wing I control. By the time she realizes what's happening, you'll be on a plane to Colombia. Kozlov gestured to the guards. Get her to the North Access Road. Torres's people are waiting. The guards hauled Seraphina to her feet. She fought every step, screaming, thrashing, but they were professionals, and she was just a woman who'd learned to survive by staying quiet. They dragged her out of the vault, up the stairs, through corridors still reeking of gunpowder and blood. On the way, they passed a window overlooking the grounds. Seraphina caught a glimpse of the aftermath, bodies being covered, guards regrouping, smoke rising from the greenhouse. And in the distance, headlights approaching on the coastal road. Torres's extraction team. Terror clawed up her throat. The guards shoved her into a service elevator. Kozlov followed, checking his phone with the casual efficiency of a man who'd planned this down to the second. For what it's worth, he said without looking up, I didn't want it to go this way. If Damien had been reasonable, we could have negotiated. Torres would have settled for partial control of the shipping routes. Your father could have kept his empire. Everyone walks away alive. Except me. Seraphina's voice was hoarse from screaming. I get sold to Vicente anyway. You get to live. That's more than most people in your position. The elevator descended. Seraphina could feel the panic building in her chest, black and suffocating. She thought about Vicente Torres, the arrest records, the women who'd tried to leave him and never made it. She thought about being locked in some compound in Colombia, surrounded by men who hurt people for entertainment. She thought about dying there. The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto an underground parking garage. A black van was waiting, engine running. 2 men in tactical gear stood beside it. Torres's people, their faces hard and empty. When they saw Seraphina, one of them smiled. She felt her bladder clench. No, she whispered. Please, don't. Kozlov handed her off like she was cargo. Delivery as promised. Vicente's expecting her within 12 hours. The guard who'd smiled grabbed Seraphina's arm. His grip was iron. Mr. Torres sends his regards. He started dragging her toward the van. Seraphina's legs gave out. She collapsed, dead weight, forcing them to carry her. Damien will kill you for this, she screamed at Kozlov. Catherine will hunt you down. They'll try. Kozlov was already walking away. But I'll be in Geneva by sunrise, with enough money to disappear forever. Good luck, Ms. Vale. You're going to need it." He disappeared into the shadows. The guards lifted Seraphina bodily and threw her into the back of the van. She hit the metal floor hard, her zip-tied hands unable to break the fall. Pain exploded through her shoulder. Before she could roll over, one of them was on her, forcing a hood over her head, plunging her into darkness. The van doors slammed, engine noise, movement. The vehicle lurched forward. Seraphina couldn't see, couldn't breathe through the hood, couldn't do anything except lie on the freezing metal floor and feel every bump as they drove away from the estate, away from Damien, away from any chance of rescue. She was alone. She was caught, and she was being delivered to the monster her father had sold her to. The hood came off 20 minutes later. Seraphina blinked in the sudden light, her eyes streaming. The van had stopped. They were in some kind of warehouse. Concrete floor, exposed beams, the smell of oil and rust. Through the open loading bay, she could see darkness and hear ocean waves. Different ocean than Damien's estate. They'd driven south. The guards hauled her out of the van and dumped her in a metal chair. One of them cut the zip ties off her wrists, only to replace them with handcuffs that bit into her skin. The other guard produced a phone, typed something, and stepped away. Seraphina's shoulder throbbed where she'd hit the van floor. Her hands were still bleeding through the gauze. Her entire body shook with adrenaline and terror. The guard with the phone returned. "Vicente wants proof of life before we transport. Smile for the camera." He held up the phone. Seraphina spit at him. The guard backhanded her across the face hard enough to snap her head sideways. Blood filled her mouth. Her vision went white, then cleared slowly. When she could focus again, the phone was inches from her face, recording. "Seraphina Vale," the guard said, "alive and undamaged, ready for transport to Cartagena as arranged." He ended the recording and sent it. 30 seconds later, the phone buzzed with a response. The guard read it, smiled. "Vicente says he's looking forward to meeting you, says he has plans." Seraphina's stomach heaved. She swallowed bile and blood and forced herself to breathe. Think. She had to think. But her mind was blank. White noise and panic. Every survival instinct she'd ever had was screaming at her to run, fight, do something. But she was handcuffed to a chair in a warehouse surrounded by armed men, and there was nowhere to go. This was it. This was how her story ended. Not in a ballroom with champagne and whispers. Not in Damien's estate learning to be dangerous. But here, in a warehouse that smelled like death, waiting to be shipped to a man who would break her apart piece by piece until there was nothing left. She thought about her mother, dying alone in a hospital room, terrorized by Genevieve, unable to protect her daughter from the monsters circling closer. She thought about Damien, bleeding in some medical wing, betrayed by someone he'd trusted. She thought about all the rage she'd been carrying since the gala, all the fury at her father and Genevieve and every person who'd treated her like she didn't matter. And she thought about what Catherine had said. Your mother fought for you right up until the end. Seraphina wasn't her mother. She wasn't going to die quietly. The warehouse loading bay door screeched open. A second vehicle pulled in. Another black van, this one with diplomatic plates. Torres's official transport. Once she got in that vehicle, she'd cross into international waters, into territory where laws didn't apply, where Damien couldn't reach her. The guards moved toward her, ready to transfer her. Seraphina looked at the handcuffs, at the chair bolted to the floor, at the guard's gun holstered at his hip, just barely within reach if she moved fast enough. She'd never fired a gun in her life, but she'd watched Damien move, watched Catherine, watched every guard on the estate carry themselves like violence was a language they spoke fluently, and she'd learned more than she realized. The first guard reached for her arm. Seraphina lunged. She got her cuffed hands around his gun before he could react, yanked it from the holster with both hands, and fired blind. The recoil nearly broke her wrists. The shot went wild, punched through the warehouse wall somewhere behind them. But the noise, the sheer explosive violence of it, made everyone freeze for half a second. Half a second was all she needed. Seraphina threw herself backward, chair and all, hitting the concrete floor hard enough to see stars. The impact broke the chair apart. The handcuffs were still locked, but she was free of the anchor. She rolled, came up on her knees, and fired again. This time she aimed. The bullet caught the first guard in the leg. He went down screaming. The second guard drew his weapon. Seraphina fired 3 more times, One missed. One hit the van behind him. The third caught him in the shoulder and he dropped. She ran. Out of the warehouse, into the night, her hands still cuffed in front of her, the gun clutched in both fists. Behind her, men were shouting, boots on concrete, more gunfire. A bullet struck the wall beside her head and she flinched, kept running. The warehouse was on a pier, ocean on three sides, fishing boats tied up along the docks. Ahead, a chain-link fence. Beyond it, a road with streetlights. Seraphina hit the fence at full speed, started climbing one-handed, the gun making it almost impossible. Metal dug into her palms. The handcuffs caught on the links. Behind her, the guards were closing in, weapons raised. She reached the top, threw herself over, landed wrong. Her ankle twisted. Pain shot up her leg like lightning. She collapsed on the other side, biting back a scream. "Get up! Move!" She forced herself to her feet, tested the ankle. Not broken, sprained maybe, but she could walk. Behind the fence, the guards were climbing. Seraphina limped toward the road, every step agony. The gun felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Her lungs burned. Her vision was starting to tunnel. A car appeared on the road, headlights cutting through the darkness. Seraphina stumbled into the middle of the street, waving the gun, and the car screeched to a stop. The driver's door opened. A woman got out, hands raised. "Jesus Christ, don't shoot! I need your car." Seraphina's voice came out raw. "Now." The woman looked at her, bleeding, handcuffed, holding a gun with shaking hands, and made the smart choice. She stepped aside. Seraphina climbed into the driver's seat, jammed the gun between her knees, and somehow got the car in gear with her cuffed hands. The engine roared. She slammed her foot on the gas and the car lurched forward. In the rearview mirror, the guards reached the road, weapons raised, gunfire erupted. The rear window exploded. Seraphina ducked, swerved, and drove. E.T. She made it 6 miles before the car died. Engine just quit, smoke pouring from under the hood. One of the bullets must have hit something vital. Seraphina coasted to the shoulder, killed the ignition, and sat there shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She was somewhere north of the city, rural area, no streetlights, just darkness and the distant sound of highway traffic. Her phone was gone. The gun was empty. She'd checked. The handcuffs were still locked, the metal cutting into her wrists. But she was alive. She was free. For now. Seraphina forced the door open and half fell out of the car. Her ankle screamed. Her hands were bleeding again. She could taste blood from where the guard had hit her. She started walking. Every headlight that appeared on the road behind her made her heart stop. Every shadow looked like Torres's men. But she kept moving, kept following the highway toward the city lights in the distance. She didn't know where she was going. Damien's estate was compromised. She couldn't go back there. Her apartment was the first place they'd look. Roland's house would rather hand her over than protect her. She had no money, no phone, no one to call even if she did. Seraphina walked for 2 hours before she saw the lights of a gas station ahead. She stumbled inside, ignoring the clerk's horrified expression, and begged to use the phone. The clerk looked at her bloody hands, her cuffed wrists, her torn clothes. "I'm calling the police." "No." Seraphina grabbed his arm. "Please, just let me make one call." He hesitated, then handed her his cell phone. Seraphina's mind went blank. She didn't know any numbers by heart except one, the estate security line. Catherine's direct emergency contact. She'd seen it written on a whiteboard in the war room. She dialed with shaking fingers. The line rang once, twice. Catherine's voice came through, sharp and alert. "Who is this?" "It's Seraphina." The words came out broken. "Kozlov took me. Torres's men. I escaped, but I don't know where I am, and they're looking for—" "Where are you right now, exactly?" Seraphina asked the clerk. He told her the cross streets. Catherine's keyboard clicked in the background. "Got it. Stay there. Do not move. Do not talk to anyone. I'm sending a team. 15 minutes. Is Damien—" "Alive. Stable. Pissed off." Catherine's voice softened fractionally. "You did good, kid. Just stay alive for 15 more minutes." The line went dead. Seraphina handed the phone back to the clerk, slid down the wall, and sat on the gas station floor. Her whole body hurt. Her ankle was swelling inside her boot. The handcuffs had rubbed her wrists raw, but Catherine's voice had said it.
Damien was alive, which meant this wasn't over. Seraphina closed her eyes and waited for rescue, her hands still cuffed in front of her, blood drying on her palms. And somewhere in the darkness, she felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. The girl who'd walked into the Blackthorn Foundation gala was gone. The woman who'd survived Torres's extraction team was someone else entirely. Someone who'd learned that monsters could bleed. Someone who knew how to pull a trigger. Someone ready to burn every last one of them to ash. Catherine's extraction team arrived in 12 minutes. 3 black SUVs converged on the gas station like wolves on wounded prey. Seraphina was still sitting on the floor when they pulled up, her vision swimming, her body running on fumes and adrenaline that was rapidly depleting. She watched through the window as armed personnel flooded out of the vehicles, forming a perimeter with military precision. Catherine came through the door first, her rifle slung across her back, her face carved from stone. She took one look at Seraphina, bloodied, handcuffed, barely conscious, and something violent flickered across her expression. "Get her up," she snapped at the medic behind her. "Carefully." Hands lifted Seraphina from the floor. Someone wrapped a thermal blanket around her shoulders. The medic produced bolt cutters and went to work on the handcuffs, the metal groaning before snapping apart. Blood rushed back into Seraphina's hands, and the pain made her gasp. "Easy," the medic said quietly. "You're safe now." Safe. The word felt meaningless. Catherine was already on her radio, issuing orders in clipped phrases. "Perimeter secure, package recovered. Alert Novak immediately. And I want Kozlov's location within the hour. I don't care if you have to tear the city apart to find him." She turned to Seraphina. "Can you walk?" "I ran 6 miles. I can walk." "Good. Because we're moving now." Catherine gestured toward the lead SUV. "Torres knows you escaped. He'll have teams canvassing every hospital, police station, and safe house within a 100-mile radius. We need to get you somewhere he won't think to look." Seraphina let them guide her outside. Her ankle threatened to give out with every step, but she forced herself forward. The night air was cold and sharp, clearing some of the fog from her brain. "Where's Damien?" she asked. "Conscious? Furious? Demanding to see you the second you're secure." Catherine opened the SUV door. The knife wound was clean, missed major organs. He's stitched up and heavily medicated, which is the only reason he's not out here himself. Seraphina climbed into the vehicle. The leather seats felt surreal after the warehouse floor, the van, the gas station linoleum. Catherine slid in beside her and the convoy started moving immediately, pulling away from the gas station in synchronized formation. "Kozlov?" Seraphina's voice came out rough. "Gone. Disappeared from the estate during the firefight, along with $3 million in untraceable currency and enough classified intel to sell us out to every enemy we've ever made." Catherine's jaw was tight. "He played us. Played Damien. 8 years of loyal service, and he was Torres's asset the whole time. Petrov, too." "Petrov's dead. Damien made sure of that." Catherine glanced at her. "What happened after they took you from the vault?" Seraphina told her. "The elevator. The warehouse. The guards. Vicente's message. And finally, the desperate scramble. Grabbing the gun, firing blind, running until her body nearly gave out." Catherine listened without interrupting. When Seraphina finished, the older woman was quiet for a long moment. "You killed 2 of Torres's men," she said finally. "I shot them. I don't know if they died." "They died. I have confirmation." Catherine's expression was unreadable. "You understand what that means, right? You're not a victim anymore. You're a combatant. Torres will treat you as an enemy now, not as merchandise." "Good." The word came out harder than Seraphina intended. "I'd rather be his enemy than his property." Something that might have been respect crossed Catherine's face. "Damien said you'd changed." "I didn't believe him until now." The convoy turned onto a narrow service road, away from the highway, deeper into industrial territory. Warehouses and storage facilities lined both sides, their windows dark and empty. Seraphina watched the shadows slide past and tried not to think about the last warehouse, the smell of oil and blood, the guard's smile. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Secondary safe house. Off-grid location. Torres doesn't know about it." Catherine checked her phone. "We'll regroup there, assess damage, and plan our next move." "Which is what?" "That depends on Damien."
Catherine's voice was grim. Kozlov's betrayal just cost us half our intelligence network and most of our operational security. Torres knows our protocols now, our safe houses, our communication channels. Everything Kozlov had access to, Torres has access to. We're compromised on every level. Seraphina's stomach dropped. So what do we do? We burn it all down and start over. Catherine looked at her directly. Or we run, cut our losses, disappear, and let Torres and your father tear each other apart without us in the crossfire. Damien won't run. No, he won't. Catherine's expression was bleak, which means we're going to war with half the resources we planned for and twice the enemies we expected. The odds aren't good. They never were. The convoy stopped outside a nondescript building that looked like an abandoned factory. The team moved with practiced efficiency. Perimeter check, thermal scans, entry procedures. Catherine led Seraphina inside through a reinforced door that required 3 separate biometric scans. The interior was nothing like Damien's estate. No marble, no art, just concrete walls, industrial lighting, and equipment that looked military grade. A war room in miniature, monitors lined one wall, weapons racks lined another. Medical supplies, communication gear, everything needed to wage a campaign. And in the center of it all, sitting in a chair despite clearly being told to stay in bed, was Damien. He looked like hell. Pale skin, dark circles under his eyes, a fresh bandage wrapped around his torso, blood seeping through in places. But his eyes were sharp and focused, and when he saw Seraphina, the relief on his face was so raw it hurt to look at. "You're alive," he said. "So are you." They stared at each other across the room. Neither moved. Catherine cleared her throat. "I'll give you 2 a minute. Medical team is setting up in the back room. Vale, you need stitches in those hands and that ankle needs x-rays." She left. The silence stretched. Seraphina walked toward Damien slowly, her limp pronounced now that the adrenaline was fading. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the pain he was trying to hide, far enough that she wouldn't touch him and fall apart completely. "I'm sorry," Damien said quietly. "For what?" "For not seeing Kozlov, for trusting him, for putting you in a position where you had to—" He stopped, started again. "When Catherine told me they'd taken you, that you were being transported to Torres, His voice broke. Seraphina had never heard Damien's voice break before. "I killed them," she said. The words felt important, like she needed him to understand. "The guards. I took a gun and I shot them, and I didn't hesitate." "Good. I've never killed anyone before, and now you have." Damien's eyes held hers. "How do you feel?" Seraphina thought about it, searched for guilt, horror, regret, found only cold satisfaction and the echo of terror that had driven her to pull the trigger. "Like I'd do it again," she said finally. Damien nodded slowly. "Then you're ready." "For what?" "To finish this." He shifted in the chair, winced. "Torres just declared open war. Kozlov's betrayal was the opening move. The attack on my estate was the second. By now, your father knows you're alive and free. He'll be scrambling to protect himself, probably trying to negotiate with Torres, maybe offering up Marcus or Vivian as replacement collateral. He wouldn't. He absolutely would. Roland's survival instinct outweighs any parental loyalty. You know that better than anyone." Damien gestured toward the monitors. "Catherine's team has been tracking communications. Torres is consolidating his forces. He's pulling assets from 3 countries, moving them into position around the city. Within 48 hours, he'll have enough manpower to level this entire operation and everyone in it." Seraphina's chest tightened. "So what do we do?" "We hit him first." Damien stood slowly, one hand pressed to his wounded side. "Torres thinks he has the advantage. Superior numbers. Better intelligence thanks to Kozlov. Time to prepare. But he's wrong about one thing." "What?" "He thinks you're a victim." Damien moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "He thinks you're terrified, broken, easy to control once he gets his hands on you again. He has no idea that the woman who walked into his extraction team and shot her way out is standing here planning his destruction." The air between them felt charged. "I want him dead," Seraphina said. The words came out cold. Final. "Torres, my father,
Genevieve. Everyone who thought they could buy and sell me like I was nothing. Then we give you exactly that. Damien reached out, touched her face gently. But you need to understand what you're committing to. This isn't a legal battle. This isn't exposing secrets to the press and letting the authorities handle it. This is war, personal, bloody, the kind where people die in ways that don't make the news. I know. And you're ready for that? Seraphina thought about her mother dying alone, about Hammond's hand on her wrist, about the guard in the warehouse smiling while telling her Vicente had plans, about every year of her life spent being invisible, erased, treated like a mistake. Yes, she said. I'm ready. Damien kissed her, slow and deliberate, tasting like blood and determination. When he pulled back, his thumb traced the cut on her lip where the guard had hit her. Then we start tonight, he said. Catherine returned with a tactical team and a plan. They gathered around the central table while one of the monitors displayed a map of the city marked with red pins showing Torres's known locations. Warehouses, front companies, the shipping terminal where his primary operations ran through legitimate cargo manifests. And at the center, a penthouse suite in the financial district where Torres himself was currently holed up with private security and enough firepower to withstand a siege. Direct assault is suicide, Catherine said, pointing at the penthouse. Torres has 20 armed guards minimum, probably double that. Military-grade weapons, reinforced doors, panic rooms. Even if we had the manpower, which we don't, we'd lose half our team before we reach the elevator. So we don't go direct. Damien was studying the map with surgical focus. We hit his infrastructure, force him out into the open. Catherine pulled up another screen, financial networks, shipping schedules, communication hubs. Torres's operation runs on 3 pillars. First, the shipping terminal. That's where the physical product moves, drugs, weapons, people. Second, the financial network. Shell companies and offshore accounts that wash the money. Third, political protection. Judges, police commissioners, government officials he owns outright. We've been gathering evidence on all 3 for months, Damien continued. Enough to trigger federal investigations, freeze his assets, and expose his political connections. But that takes time. Legal processes. Torres will see it coming and disappear before the net closes. So we accelerate. Seraphina heard herself speak before she'd fully formed the thought. Everyone turned to look at her. You said Torres thinks I'm broken, that I'm still merchandise he can claim. What if we use that? Catherine's eyes narrowed. Use it how? What if I offer myself up, make contact, tell him I want to negotiate, say I'll come willingly if he guarantees my father goes down too? Seraphina's mind was racing now. Torres wants leverage over Roland. If I give him that leverage voluntarily, he'll take the meeting. Absolutely not. Damien's voice was flat. You're not walking into Torres's compound as bait. It's not bait if I'm armed and you're positioned to extract me the second things go wrong. Things will go wrong the second you walk through the door. Then we make sure I don't walk through the door alone. Seraphina turned to Catherine. How many people can we insert into Torres's operation before he notices? Catherine considered. Maybe 3. 4 if we're lucky. Kozlov's betrayal gave us intel on Torres's security protocols, rotation schedules, blind spots, communication patterns. We could get a small team inside his perimeter posing as new hires or contractors. And once they're inside, they'd have access to his communications hub, his servers, maybe even his private security feeds. Catherine was warming to the idea. If we time it right, coordinate with a disinformation campaign, and simultaneous hits on his shipping terminal and financial accounts, Torres would be dealing with fires on multiple fronts. He'd be distracted. Distracted enough to let his guard down during a negotiation with me, Seraphina finished. Damien was shaking his head. This is insane. You're talking about walking into the lion's den and hoping we can kill the lion before it kills you. You have a better plan? Yes. We run. Get you somewhere Torres can't reach. Mexico, Europe. Disappear and let this war burn itself out without you in it. And my father? Genevieve? They just get away with everything they did to my mother? They'll destroy themselves eventually. People like Roland always do. Eventually isn't good enough. Seraphina's voice was hard. I want them to burn now, while I'm alive to watch. The room went silent. Damien stared at her, and she could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, weighing risks, measuring odds, trying to find an angle that didn't end with her dead. "If we do this," he said finally, "you follow my protocols exactly. No improvisation, no heroics. The second I give the extraction signal, you move." "Agreed. And we need 48 hours minimum to position the team and set up the infrastructure attacks. Torres can't know we're coming." "He won't." Catherine was already pulling up schematics. "Torres's penthouse has 3 entry points: main elevator, service entrance, and a private rooftop access for his helicopter. We can get people in through the service entrance if we time it with a scheduled delivery." "What kind of delivery?" Seraphina asked. "Food service. Torres has meals brought in 3 times a day from a restaurant he owns. High-end security but predictable schedule. If we intercept the delivery van, replace the staff with our people, we're inside." "How many can we fit in a delivery van?" 4, maybe 5 if they're small. Catherine looked at Seraphina. "You'd go in through the front, scheduled meeting. Torres's people would pat you down, scan for weapons, probably put you in a room under surveillance while he decides whether to honor the negotiation or just take you by force. And while that's happening, your team comes up through the service entrance." "Exactly. We'd have maybe 6 minutes between when you enter the building and when Torres figures out what's happening. That's our window." Damien's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression went dark. "Roland just released a statement. He's claiming you were kidnapped by me. Says he's working with federal authorities to secure your safe return. There are photos circulating, the gala, the kiss, me taking you from the ballroom. He's spinning it as an abduction." Seraphina's blood went cold. "He's trying to make you look like the criminal, and himself look like the concerned father. It's smart. If federal authorities get involved, they'll freeze both my operations and Torres's while they investigate. Everything we've built toward, the evidence, the exposure, it all gets tied up in legal bureaucracy for years." "How long do we have before that happens?" "A day, maybe less." Damien looked at Catherine. "We move tonight. No more 48 hours. We accelerate everything." Catherine nodded. "I'll mobilize the team. But Vale, you need medical attention first. Those hands need stitches. That ankle could be fractured." "Later." "Now." Catherine's tone left no room for argument. "Because if you pass out from blood loss during the operation, you're a liability instead of an asset. 30 minutes. Get patched up. Then we plan." She left to rally the team. Seraphina looked down at her hands. The gauze was soaked through, blood dripping onto the concrete floor. Her ankle had swollen to twice its normal size inside her boot. The adrenaline that had carried her this far was fading fast, leaving behind pain that made her vision swim. Damien touched her shoulder gently. "Come on. Medical team's in the back." She followed him through a narrow corridor to a room that looked like a field hospital. Sterile white walls, surgical lights, equipment that probably wasn't strictly legal. A young man in scrubs looked up when they entered, his face professional and detached. "Ms. Vale," he said. "I'm Dr. Ramos. Let's get you stabilized." Seraphina sat on the examination table while Dr. Ramos cleaned and stitched her hands with practiced efficiency. 8 stitches in the left palm, 6 in the right. The needle going through her skin felt distant, like it was happening to someone else's body. She watched Damien lean against the wall, his own bandages slowly staining red, and wondered how they'd ended up here. 10 days ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was planning an assault on a drug lord's penthouse. Dr. Ramos moved to her ankle, cut away the boot, and examined the swelling. "Severe sprain, possibly a hairline fracture. You need x-rays." "No time." "Then at the very least, ice and compression." He wrapped the ankle tight, handed her a bottle of pills. "Painkillers. Take 2 now, 2 more in 4 hours. They'll keep you functional, but they'll also make you drowsy. Don't operate heavy machinery or make critical decisions while medicated." "I'll be negotiating with a sociopath who wants to own me. Does that count as a critical decision?" Dr. Ramos looked at Damien. "Is she serious?" "Unfortunately." The doctor sighed, finished bandaging Seraphina's ankle, and stepped back. "You're good to go. Try not to die in the next 24 hours. "I'll do my best." Damien helped her off the table. Her ankle screamed when she put weight on it, but the compression bandage held.
She swallowed the painkillers dry and felt them scrape down her throat. They walked back to the war room together. Catherine had assembled the team, 8 people total, all armed, all wearing expressions that said they'd done this before. She looked up when Seraphina entered. "All right," Catherine said. "Here's what we know. Torres is expecting contact from either Roland or us within the next 12 hours. He's positioned his forces for a prolonged siege, which means he's playing defense. That gives us a small advantage." She pulled up a new schematic, the penthouse layout in detail. "Vale, when you make contact, you'll request a face-to-face meeting. Tell him you want immunity for yourself in exchange for testimony against your father. Make it sound desperate, scared, like you're looking for protection." "I can do that." "Torres will agree because he wants you under his control, but he'll also be suspicious. He'll search you thoroughly. No weapons, no wire, no tracking devices. You'll be completely exposed." "I understand." "The meeting will take place in his main conference room here." Catherine pointed at the schematic. "Reinforced windows, 2 exits, heavy security presence. Our team will come in through the service elevator, neutralize guards along the route, and breach the conference room exactly 4 minutes after you arrive. That's when the extraction happens." "What about Torres?" Seraphina asked. Catherine and Damien exchanged a look. "Torres doesn't leave that room alive," Damien said quietly. "Neither does anyone who tries to stop us." The words hung in the air. Seraphina nodded slowly. "Good." Catherine continued the briefing. "Timing, entry points, weapons loadout, emergency extraction routes." Seraphina absorbed it all, committing details to memory, trying not to think about the 100 ways this could go catastrophically wrong. When Catherine finished, she looked at Seraphina directly. "Last chance to back out. No judgment. This is suicide mission territory, and you didn't sign up for this." "Yes, I did." Seraphina met her eyes. "The second I took Damien's hand at the gala, I signed up for this." "Then let's gear up." The team dispersed to prepare. Damien pulled Seraphina aside, his hand gentle on her arm. "If this goes wrong," he said quietly, "if Torres gets his hands on you before we can extract you—" "He won't!" "But if he does, if we fail, I need you to promise me something." Seraphina looked up at him. "What?" "Don't go quietly." His eyes were fierce. "Fight, scream, make him work for every second, because I will burn his entire empire to ash to get you back. But I need you to stay alive long enough for me to reach you." "I promise." He kissed her forehead. "I'll see you on the other side." Then he was gone, moving toward the weapons racks with Catherine, leaving Seraphina standing alone in the war room, surrounded by monitors showing a city that wanted her dead or owned. She thought about her mother, about the hospital room where Elena had died alone, terrorized and abandoned, about Genevieve's cold cruelty and Roland's calculated indifference, about every person who'd looked through her like she was invisible. And she thought about the guard in the warehouse, the feeling of the gun in her hands, the way he'd fallen when she pulled the trigger. Seraphina wasn't invisible anymore. She was a weapon. And tonight, she was going to make sure everyone remembered that. They made the call at midnight. Catherine had acquired a burner phone from somewhere, untraceable and encrypted. Seraphina held it with bandaged hands and dialed the number Damien had provided, Torres's private line, the one only his inner circle knew. It rang 3 times. Then a voice answered, smooth, accented, amused. "Ms. Vale," Cristobal Torres said, "I wondered when you'd call." Seraphina's mouth went dry. She forced herself to speak, to make her voice shake the right way. "I need to talk to you." "So I gathered. My men tell me you killed 2 of them and stole a car. Very impressive for someone with no training. I want to make a deal." "Do you now?" Torres sounded entertained. "And what makes you think I'm interested in dealing with you?" "You're already mine, Seraphina. Vicente is quite eager to begin your education." Her stomach turned. "My father has information you want. Financial records, shipping routes, connections to people who can make your life very difficult. I can get you all of it." Silence on the other end. Then, "Continue." "I testify against him. Give you everything you need to destroy him completely. In exchange, you guarantee my safety. No Vicente. No compound in Colombia. I disappear, and you never look for me." Torres laughed. It was a cold sound.
You want me to believe you'd betray your own father? He sold me to your psychopath son to cover his debts. What loyalty do I owe him? Another pause, longer this time. Interesting, Torres said finally. Very interesting, but I think you're lying. I think Damian Novak is standing beside you right now, feeding you lines, trying to set a trap. Seraphina looked at Damian across the room. He nodded once. Damian's dead, she said. Your men killed him during the estate attack. Kozlov confirmed it before he disappeared with your money. Kozlov says a lot of things, most of them lies. Then don't believe me, but I'm offering you Roland Vale's complete destruction on a silver platter. If you're too paranoid to take the meeting, fine. I'll find another buyer. The FBI would love this information. So would your competitors. She could hear Torres breathing on the other end, calculating. One meeting, he said finally. Tomorrow. Noon. My penthouse. You come alone, unarmed. If I detect any surveillance, any tracking devices, any sign that Novak is alive and staging a rescue, Vicente gets you anyway, and what he does to you will take weeks instead of years. Do you understand? Yes. Good. My people will send you the address. Don't be late. The line went dead. Seraphina lowered the phone, her hands shaking for real now. Catherine looked at Damian. He bought it? He's suspicious but greedy. He'll take the meeting. Damian checked his watch. 12 hours. We need to move assets into position now. Service entrance breach team leaves in 30 minutes. Perimeter support deploys at dawn. And Vale, he looked at Seraphina. You don't sleep tonight. We run scenarios until you can navigate that penthouse blind. I'm ready. No, you're not. But you will be. The team mobilized. Catherine's people moved with practiced efficiency, loading equipment into vehicles, checking weapons, synchronizing watches. Seraphina watched them work and felt the weight of what was about to happen settle over her like concrete. Somewhere across the city, Torres was preparing too. Positioning his guards, setting his trap, confident that he held all the cards. He had no idea that the woman he thought was helpless merchandise had spent the last 48 hours learning to be something else entirely. Seraphina touched the stitches in her palms and thought about pulling the trigger. Tomorrow, she'd do it again. But this time she wouldn't miss. And when Torres's empire burned, she'd be the one holding the match. Dawn broke gray and cold over the city. Seraphina stood in front of a mirror in the safe house bathroom and barely recognized herself. Someone had found her clean clothes, dark jeans, a black shirt, boots that fit over her bandaged ankle. Her hair was pulled back severe and tight. The stitches in her hands were hidden under thin gloves. She looked like someone going to war. She supposed she was. Catherine appeared in the doorway. Transport's ready, teams in position. Torres's penthouse is locked down tight, but we've got eyes on 3 entry points. Service delivery goes in at 11:45. That gives you a 15-minute window before our breach. And Damian? Perimeter command vehicle, half a block from the building. He'll be monitoring everything through hacked security feeds. Catherine's expression was unreadable. He wanted to be inside with the breach team. I told him if he tried it with that stab wound, he'd bleed out before reaching the 3rd floor. Did he listen? Not happily, but yes. Catherine handed her a small device that looked like a pen. Final contingency. If everything goes completely wrong, if we can't extract you, click this 3 times. It sends a GPS signal directly to Damian's phone. He'll know you're in immediate danger. Seraphina took the pen, slipped it into her pocket. And then what? Then he comes for you anyway, protocol be damned, and probably gets us all killed in the process. Catherine's voice was dry. Try not to use it. They walked outside together. The morning air was sharp and clean, carrying the smell of ocean salt and distant rain. 3 vehicles waited in formation. The team was already loaded, faces hidden behind dark glasses and tactical gear. Damian stood beside the lead vehicle. He looked steadier than he had last night, but pain was still etched into every line of his face. When he saw Seraphina, something raw and desperate crossed his expression before the mask came back. Last chance, he said quietly. We can still abort, find another way. There is no other way. Seraphina moved closer. Torres won't stop. My father won't stop. This ends today or it never ends. And if you don't make it out, then you finish it without me. Damian pulled her against him, careful of her injuries, his hand cradling the back of her head. She could feel his heart hammering against her cheek. "I'm not losing you," he whispered. "Then don't." Seraphina pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "Be ready when I give the signal. And Damien, when we get Torres in that room, when everything goes loud, don't hesitate. Just end him." "I won't." She kissed him, hard and fierce and final. Then she climbed into the vehicle before she could change her mind. Catherine got in beside her. The driver pulled away from the safe house, joining traffic, heading toward the financial district where Torres waited. Seraphina watched the city slide past and tried to control her breathing. Her hands hurt, her ankle throbbed. The painkillers had worn off, and Dr. Ramos's warning about critical decisions echoed in her head. "You don't have to do this," Catherine said quietly. "Yes, I do." "Why? Really why? Not because of revenge, not because of your father. Why are you willing to die today?" Seraphina thought about it, about her mother's empty grave, about being invisible, about the girl who'd walked into the Blackthorn Foundation gala expecting nothing and found war instead. "Because I'm tired of being afraid," she said finally. "Because I'd rather die fighting than spend the rest of my life running." Catherine nodded slowly. "Then you'll do fine." The financial district rose ahead of them, glass towers catching the morning light, the city's wealth concentrated in square miles of steel and power. Torres's building dominated the skyline, 70 stories of black glass and arrogance. The vehicle stopped 2 blocks away. "From here you walk," Catherine said. "We'll be watching every step. The service team breaches at 11:45. That's your countdown. 4 minutes after you enter that conference room, we come through the door. Stay alive until then." "I will." Seraphina climbed out. Her ankle protested but held. She started walking toward Torres's building, each step measured, her heart a drum against her ribs. People passed her on the sidewalk, oblivious. Business people heading to meetings, tourists taking photos. The machinery of normal life operating around her while she walked toward something that would end in blood. The building's entrance was marble and steel. Security guards flanked the lobby. Seraphina walked through the doors and approached the desk. "Seraphina Vale," she said. "I have a noon appointment with Mr. Torres." The guard checked his computer, made a call, spoke in rapid Spanish, then gestured toward the elevators. 70th floor. Someone will meet you." She rode the elevator in silence, watching the floor numbers climb. Her reflection in the polished doors looked calm, composed, nothing like the terror screaming inside her skull. The doors opened on the 70th floor. 2 guards waited, both armed, both watching her with dead eyes. "Arms out," one of them said. Seraphina complied. They patted her down thoroughly, professional and invasive, checking every seam and fold. One of them found the pen device Catherine had given her. He examined it, clicked it experimentally, then handed it back. "Just a pen," he said in accented English. They led her down a corridor lined with dark wood and expensive art. At the end, double doors opened onto a conference room that overlooked the entire city. And standing at the window silhouetted against the skyline was Cristobal Torres. He turned when she entered. Mid-50s, silver hair, expensive suit. A face that would have been handsome if not for the absolute emptiness behind the eyes. He looked at Seraphina the way someone might look at a painting they were considering buying. "Ms. Vale," he said. "You're punctual. I appreciate that." Seraphina forced herself to walk into the room. The guards closed the doors behind her. She was alone with the monster, and the clock was counting down. 4 minutes until Catherine's team breached. 4 minutes to stay alive. Torres gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." Seraphina sat, her hands clenched in her lap, and watched Torres move closer. Outside the window, the city sprawled beneath them, oblivious and glittering. And somewhere in that city, Damien was watching, waiting, ready to burn it all down if she gave the signal. Torres sat across from her and smiled. "Now then," he said, "let's talk about your father." The game had begun. And Seraphina Vale, the forgotten bastard daughter, the invisible girl, the woman who'd learned to pull a trigger, was about to show him exactly what a mistake he'd made by thinking she was still prey. The clock ticked toward 11:45, and everything was about to explode. Torres poured himself scotch from a crystal decanter and didn't offer Seraphina any. "Your father," he said, settling into the chair across from her, "is a coward, but I suspect you already know that."
Seraphina kept her face neutral, her hands folded in her lap to hide the trembling. Through the conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows, the city stretched out 70 stories below, distant, indifferent, unaware that in this room, everything was about to detonate. 3 minutes and 40 seconds until Catherine's breach team came through that door. She could do this.
I know what he is, Seraphina said. That's why I'm here. Torres swirled his scotch, watching her with the clinical interest of a man studying an insect under glass. Tell me something, Ms. Vale. Do you really think I'm stupid enough to believe you'd betray him just to save yourself? Her pulse spiked. I'm not trying to save myself, I'm trying to destroy him.
Ah, revenge. Torres smiled. That I believe. Revenge is honest. It's clean. Much more convincing than your little speech about wanting protection. He took a sip. But here's what I don't understand. If you wanted Roland destroyed, why come to me? Why not go to the authorities, the press? You had options. The authorities are in your pocket. The press would have buried the story within a week. You're the only one with enough power to actually end him. Flattering, but still not the whole truth. Torres set his glass down. You're here because Damian Novak sent you, because he's not dead, despite what you claimed on the phone. Because this whole negotiation is theater designed to get you close enough to, what, kill me? Extract information? Buy time for some elaborate rescue? Seraphina's blood went cold. Torres laughed at her expression. Did you think I wouldn't prepare for that possibility? I've been in this business 30 years, girl. I know a setup when I see one. He pulled a phone from his pocket, pressed a button. The conference room doors opened and 4 guards entered, weapons drawn. The question, Torres continued calmly, is whether Novak is monitoring this conversation, whether he's close enough to stage an intervention, and whether he values your life enough to come running when I do this. He stood, crossed to Seraphina in 2 strides, and grabbed her by the throat. Her windpipe collapsed under his grip. She clawed at his hand, gasping, her vision already starting to tunnel. Torres lifted her partially out of the chair, his face inches from hers. If Novak is listening, he said conversationally, he has approximately 30 seconds before I crush her larynx. After that, she'll suffocate slowly while I watch. So if you're planning something dramatic, I suggest you accelerate your timeline. Seraphina couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her hand scrabbled uselessly against Torres's iron grip. Black spots bloomed across her vision. Then gunfire erupted outside the conference room. Torres's head snapped toward the sound. His grip loosened fractionally. Seraphina drove her knee into his groin with every ounce of strength she had left. Torres staggered back, releasing her. She collapsed to the floor, gasping, her throat on fire. The guards raised their weapons, but the conference room door exploded inward in a shower of splintered wood and smoke. Catherine came through first, rifle raised, and shot 2 of the guards before they could react. The breach team followed, 4 operators in tactical gear moving with lethal precision. The remaining guards went down in a coordinated burst of suppressed gunfire. Torres dove for cover behind his desk. Catherine grabbed Seraphina's arm, hauled her to her feet. "Can you walk?" Seraphina nodded, still gasping. "Then move. Now." They ran. Out of the conference room, into the corridor where bodies already littered the expensive carpet. Catherine's team had carved a path of destruction through Torres's guards. Suppressed rounds, close-quarters combat, no survivors. Seraphina's ankle screamed, but she forced herself forward. Catherine's hand locked on her arm, pulling her toward the service elevator. Behind them, Torres was shouting orders in Spanish. More guards were coming. Seraphina could hear boots pounding on stairs, radios crackling, the building's alarm system finally catching up to the violence. They reached the service elevator. One of Catherine's operators was holding it open, his rifle trained down the corridor. 30 seconds, he said tersely. Building security's mobilizing. We need to go. Where's Torres? Catherine demanded. Barricaded in the conference room. Reinforced door. We'd need charges to breach it, and we don't have time. Catherine cursed. She looked at Seraphina. We abort. Get you out. Come back for Torres later. No. Seraphina's voice was raw but firm. He dies today. Vale? He put his hands on me. He was going to kill me slowly just to make Damian watch. Seraphina met Catherine's eyes. I'm not leaving until he's dead. Catherine stared at her for a long moment. Then she turned to her team. Anders? Martinez? Get Vale to the extraction point. The rest of you. With me. We're going back. Catherine, the reinforcements, what? One of the operators started. Will be a problem in approximately 90 seconds, which is how long we have to kill Torres and get out. Catherine chambered around. Anyone who wants to live through this, move fast and shoot straight. She turned back down the corridor. Seraphina pulled away from the operator, trying to guide her to the elevator. I'm going with you. Like hell you are. It's my fight. You can't even walk without limping, and you're unarmed. Seraphina grabbed a pistol from one of the dead guards, checked the magazine by muscle memory she didn't remember learning. 15 rounds. Not anymore. Catherine looked like she wanted to argue. Then gunfire erupted from the direction of the main elevators, building security engaging with Catherine's perimeter team. The window for escape was closing fast. Stay behind me, Catherine snapped. You get shot because you did something stupid. I'm leaving your body. They moved back toward the conference room. Two of Catherine's operators were already positioning charges on the reinforced door while the third provided cover. Through the door, Seraphina could hear Torres barking orders, could hear movement inside. Charges set, the operator said. 5-second fuse. Clear the corridor. They fell back. The operator triggered the detonator. The explosion was smaller than Seraphina expected, but devastatingly effective. The reinforced door blew inward in a shower of twisted metal. Smoke billowed out. Catherine's team went in immediately, weapons raised. Seraphina followed. The conference room was chaos. The blast had shredded the interior, furniture overturned, windows cracked, fire suppression system activated and raining water down on everything. Torres was on the floor behind his desk, one arm bleeding, his face twisted with rage and pain. He still had a gun. He raised it toward Catherine. Seraphina shot him first. The bullet caught Torres in the shoulder. He spun, fired wild. His round went through the window behind Seraphina's head and the glass exploded outward. Wind screamed into the room. Catherine put 2 rounds in Torres's chest. He went down hard. Seraphina crossed to him, her gun raised, her hand steady despite the adrenaline burning through her system. Torres was still alive, barely. Blood bubbled from his lips, his eyes found hers, and something that might have been surprise flickered across his face. You were supposed to be merchandise, he choked out. I was never yours to sell. Seraphina's finger tightened on the trigger. This is for every woman you thought you owned. She fired once more. Torres's head snapped back. His eyes went empty. He was dead before his body finished falling. The room went silent except for the howl of wind through the shattered window and the hiss of the fire suppression system. Catherine touched Seraphina's shoulder. We need to move. Now. But Seraphina couldn't move. She stood over Torres's body and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no horror, just a vast yawning emptiness where all her rage had been burning. Vale. Catherine's voice was sharper. Building security is 30 seconds out. We go now, or we die here. That broke through. Seraphina turned away from the body and followed Catherine out of the ruined conference room. They ran through corridors now filling with smoke, past bodies and blood and the detritus of violence. The service elevator was still waiting. They piled in. Seraphina, Catherine, 3 operators, and the doors closed just as building security reached their floor. The elevator descended in tense silence. Seraphina's ears were ringing. Her hands were shaking. She could taste copper and smoke. The gun felt impossibly heavy in her grip. Her voice cracked. Did I just kill him? Yes. Catherine's expression was unreadable. And if you're about to feel guilty about it, don't. Torres was a monster who destroyed thousands of lives. You did the world a favor. The elevator stopped at the loading dock level. The doors opened onto organized chaos, Catherine's perimeter team exchanging fire with building security, the delivery van idling with its doors open, someone screaming into a radio about federal authorities en route. They ran for the van. Bullets sparked off the concrete around them. One of the operators took a round to the leg and went down. Catherine dragged him up, shoved him into the van. Seraphina climbed in after, her ankle finally giving out completely. She collapsed onto the van floor as the doors slammed and the vehicle lurched into motion. Through the small window in the back, she watched Torres's building recede, saw police cars converging, saw smoke billowing from the 70th floor, saw the organized world she'd just torn apart trying to reassemble itself. The van turned a corner and the building disappeared. Catherine was on her radio immediately. Package secure. Torres neutralized. Rally point Alpha in 10 minutes. Someone tell Novak his girl's alive before he does something stupid. Her girl. The words felt surreal. Seraphina sat up slowly, her whole body one massive bruise. Her throat throbbed where Torres had choked her. Her ankle was swelling again. The gun was still in her hand, and she didn't remember deciding to keep holding it. "You did good," one of the operators said. He was applying pressure to his teammate's leg wound. "Clean shot, no hesitation." Seraphina looked at him. "I've killed 3 people in the last 2 days. And you're alive because of it." He glanced at Catherine. "She's got ice in her veins. Novak picked a good one." But Seraphina didn't feel like she had ice in her veins. She felt like she was falling apart from the inside, held together only by momentum and the gun in her hands. The van pulled into an underground parking garage somewhere in the warehouse district. Damien was there before the van had fully stopped. The door wrenched open, his eyes wild until he saw Seraphina. Then he was pulling her out, his hands on her face, checking for injuries, his expression raw and desperate. "You're alive," he breathed. "Torres isn't." Damien went still. "You killed him?" "Yes." Something complicated crossed his face. Relief, pride, concern all tangled together. He pulled her against him, careful of her injuries, his heart hammering against her cheek. "Catherine told me he put his hands on you," Damien said quietly. "If you hadn't killed him, I was going back to do it myself." "It's done. He's gone." Seraphina pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "What about my father?" "Federal agents raided Vale Holdings an hour ago. The evidence we leaked hit 6 regulatory agencies simultaneously. Roland's in custody. So is Genevieve. Marcus and Vivian are already negotiating immunity deals." Damien's expression was grim. "Your father's empire is collapsing in real time. By tomorrow, the Vale name will be synonymous with trafficking and corruption." "Good." Catherine approached, her tactical gear still smoking. "We need to clear this location in 5 minutes. Local PD is canvassing the area, and we've got wounded that need real medical attention. Novak, where's our next staging point?" "Safe house in the industrial sector. Medical team's already there." Damien looked at Seraphina. "Can you travel?" She nodded, even though every part of her body was screaming in protest. They loaded into new vehicles and disappeared into the city. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of pain, exhaustion, and the slow realization that they'd actually won. Torres was dead. His organization fractured immediately. Lieutenants fighting over territory, federal authorities seizing assets, international warrants issued for anyone even tangentially connected to his trafficking network. Roland Vale was formally charged with conspiracy, money laundering, and facilitating human trafficking. The evidence was overwhelming. His lawyers tried to negotiate, but there was nothing left to negotiate with. Genevieve turned on him immediately, claiming she'd been coerced, that she'd had no knowledge of his criminal activities. No one believed her. Marcus and Vivian both accepted plea deals in exchange for testimony. The perfect Vale family imploded on national television. Seraphina watched it all from the safe house, her ankle in a cast, her hands bandaged, her throat still bruised purple from Torres's grip. She watched her father escorted into federal court in handcuffs, watched Genevieve's carefully constructed facade crack on camera, watched the empire her mother had been crushed under finally collapse into rubble. And she felt nothing. Damien found her on the 5th day, sitting by the window overlooking the industrial wasteland, her eyes distant. "Catherine says you haven't slept," he said quietly. "Can't." "Nightmares?" "No, just nothing. I keep thinking I should feel something. Satisfaction, revenge, closure. But there's just empty space where all the anger used to be." Damien sat beside her. His wound was healing, but he moved carefully, still favoring his left side. "That's normal. You burned through years of rage in 1 week. Your body doesn't know what to do now that it's over." "Is it over? The immediate threat?" "Yes. Torres is dead. Your father's going to prison for the rest of his life. Kozlov vanished into the wind, but he's not stupid enough to come back." Damien paused. "But the aftermath? That's going to take time." Seraphina looked at him. "What happens to me now?" "That's up to you." Damien's expression was careful. "You could disappear. New identity, new country. enough money to never worry about anything again. Or you could stay. Help me rebuild what Kozlov destroyed. Turn your mother's foundation into something real. And us? Also up to you. His voice was quiet. I'm not good at this part. The part where the war ends and normal life is supposed to start. I don't know how to be with someone without violence surrounding us. Neither do I. They sat in silence for a long moment. My mother, Seraphina said finally. I want to know exactly what Genevieve said to her in that hospital room. The thing that killed her. Damien pulled out his phone, opened a file. I had someone pull the hospital records. There was a nurse on duty that day who logged the visit but didn't include details. She's retired now, lives in Oregon. If you want to talk to her, I do. I'll arrange it. Margaret. The nurse's name was Margaret Chen, and she met them at a coffee shop in Portland 2 weeks later. She was in her 60s, gray-haired and kind-faced, and she remembered Elena Mercer. I've thought about that day for 12 years, Margaret said quietly. Your mother was dying, stage 4 cancer, in terrible pain, but she was holding on, waiting for something. I think now it was you, waiting to make sure you'd be okay. Seraphina's throat tightened. What did Genevieve say to her? Margaret's expression hardened. I wasn't supposed to be listening, but the walls in that hospital were thin and Mrs. Vale, Genevieve, wasn't trying to be quiet. She told your mother about another woman, years before you were born, someone else who'd gotten pregnant by Roland. The world tilted. Genevieve said she'd paid that woman to terminate the pregnancy and disappear. Said it had been easy. Said if Elena didn't stay quiet about you, if she tried to claim any inheritance or acknowledgement, the same thing would happen to you, that you'd disappear and Elena would never know where you went. Seraphina couldn't breathe. Your mother believed her, Margaret continued. She died believing that staying silent was the only way to keep you safe. I wanted to report it, wanted to tell someone what I'd heard, but I had no proof, just the memory of a cruel woman terrorizing someone on their deathbed. Seraphina sat there, her hands clenched so tight her stitches threatened to tear. Damien's hand found hers under the table, solid and warm. Thank you, she managed, for remembering her. She talked about you, Margaret said, in those last days. Said you were the only thing she'd ever done right. Said you were going to be stronger than all of them put together. Margaret's eyes were wet. I think she was right. Tucked-in. They flew back to the city the next day. Seraphina went directly to the federal detention center where Genevieve was being held pending trial. It took 2 hours of bureaucratic wrangling, but Damien made calls and doors opened. They put Seraphina in a small room with reinforced glass and a phone. On the other side of the glass, Genevieve appeared, her perfect hair disheveled, her designer clothes replaced with prison orange, her carefully maintained facade cracked and showing the rot underneath. She picked up the phone. Seraphina picked up hers. They stared at each other. You look terrible, Genevieve said finally. Her voice still carried that aristocratic edge despite everything. Prison doesn't suit you. It doesn't suit you either. Seraphina's voice was flat. I talked to Margaret Chen, the nurse who was there when you visited my mother. Genevieve's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. I know what you said to her, Seraphina continued, about the other woman, the other pregnancy, the threat you made. I was protecting my family. You were protecting your social position. My mother was dying and you terrorized her because you couldn't stand the idea that Roland had been unfaithful. Your mother was a mistake. You were a mistake. Genevieve's mask was slipping now, venom seeping through. Roland should have paid her off before you were born. Should have made sure she disappeared. I tried to fix his failure, but he was too weak to follow through. She died thinking I was in danger, died believing she had to stay silent to keep me safe. And she was right. If she'd caused problems, I would have made you disappear, just like I did with... Genevieve stopped. Seraphina's blood went cold. Just like you did with who? Genevieve's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. You want the truth? Fine. The other woman, the first bastard, I didn't just pay her to terminate. I made sure the procedure went wrong, made sure there would be complications. She bled out in a clinic in Mexico and no one asked questions. The room seemed to stop existing. You murdered her, Seraphina whispered. I protected what was mine. Genevieve leaned closer to the glass. And I would have done the same to you if your mother had stepped out of line. So yes, girl, your mother died terrified, but her fear kept you alive. Seraphina sat there, phone pressed to her ear, and felt the last piece of her childhood burn away. You're going to die in prison, she said quietly. Alone, forgotten, and no one will mourn you.
Neither will they mourn you when Torres's people find you.
Oh yes, did you think Vicente was his only son? He has 3 more, and they all know your name. Then they can join their father. Seraphina hung up the phone and walked out. Behind the glass, Genevieve was still talking, her mouth moving soundlessly, her eyes wild. Seraphina didn't look back. 6 months later, the Mercer Foundation opened its doors. The building was in the financial district, 3 blocks from where Torres had died. Seraphina had chosen the location deliberately, a monument built on the grave of monsters. The foundation's mission was simple: provide financial resources, legal support, and safe housing for women escaping situations where they were treated as property. Abusive relationships, trafficking, coercive families. The things no one talked about, but everyone knew existed. Elena Mercer's name was carved into the marble entrance in letters 3 feet high. For the first time, her mother existed publicly, proudly. Seraphina stood in the empty lobby on opening day and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness. Not closure. But peace. You did it, Damien said behind her. She turned. He looked better now. The stab wound had healed into a thin scar. The shadows under his eyes had faded. He'd shaved and gotten his hair cut and almost looked like a normal person. Almost. We did it, she corrected. No, this was you. Damien gestured at the building. I just provided the money. You did the rest. The foundation's first clients were arriving, women with haunted eyes and nowhere else to go. Seraphina greeted each one personally, showed them to safe rooms with locks on the inside, promised them that here no one would hurt them. She meant it. Later, when the building was quiet and the staff had gone home, Seraphina and Damien stood on the rooftop and watched the city lights come on. Your father's sentencing is next week, Damien said. Prosecution is asking for 40 years. He'll die in prison. Good. Genevieve's pleading insanity. Her lawyers are claiming diminished capacity. Will it work? No, too much evidence, too many witnesses. She'll get life without parole. Damien paused. Do you want to be there? At the sentencing? Seraphina thought about it. Thought about sitting in a courtroom watching her father face consequences, watching Genevieve's perfect mask finally shatter completely. No, she said finally. I don't need to see it. I already know how it ends. They stood in comfortable silence. Vicente's brothers, Seraphina said. The ones Genevieve mentioned. Are they a real threat? They were. Past tense. Damien's voice was carefully neutral. Catherine's people located 2 of them. They're no longer a concern. The 3rd is in a Colombian prison and not getting out anytime soon. Seraphina looked at him. You killed them. I ensured you could sleep without looking over your shoulder. The method is irrelevant. Damien, I'm not apologizing. His eyes met hers. You want honesty? I'd do it again. I'd kill 100 more if it meant you were safe. That's who I am. That's what I do. I know. And she did. She'd stopped pretending Damien was anything other than what he was. A man who operated in shadows, who solved problems with violence, who built empires on the graves of his enemies. She'd stopped pretending she wasn't falling in love with him anyway. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. How to have a normal relationship with someone whose idea of protection is targeted assassination. Then we don't have a normal relationship. Damien turned to face her fully. We have what we have. Complicated, dangerous, built on violence and survival. I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not, and I'm not asking you to change who you've become. Who have I become? Someone who pulled a trigger 3 times and didn't flinch. Someone who built a foundation instead of hiding. Someone who survived. He touched her face gently. Someone I'd burn the world down for. Seraphina kissed him, slow and deliberate, tasting like coffee and smoke and something that might have been happiness. When they pulled apart, The city spread out below them, vast and indifferent, and full of people who had no idea what had happened in the shadows to keep them safe.
"What do we do now?" Seraphina asked. "We keep going. You run your foundation. I dismantle what's left of Torres's network. We fight, we argue, we make each other better or worse depending on the day." "That's not much of a plan." "It's the only one I've got." Damien smiled. It was a rare expression on his face, but genuine. "Unless you have a better idea."
Seraphina thought about her mother, about being invisible, about the girl who'd walked into a ballroom expecting nothing and found war instead. She thought about the gun in her hands in that warehouse, the moment she'd decided to fight instead of flee, the moment everything changed. "No," she said. "I think that plan works." 1 year later, Seraphina stood in front of her mother's grave. It wasn't really a grave. Elena had been cremated and scattered, no marker left behind. But Seraphina had commissioned a memorial in the city cemetery anyway. Black marble. Simple inscription. Elena Mercer. She fought for what mattered. Flowers surrounded the memorial, some from Seraphina, others from women who'd passed through the foundation and wanted to honor the woman whose name gave them sanctuary.
"I did it, Mom," Seraphina said quietly. "I made them pay. All of them." The wind rustled through the cemetery trees. Somewhere nearby, a bird called out. "Roland's in prison. Genevieve too. Torres is dead. The empire you were crushed under doesn't exist anymore. I burned it down." She knelt, placed fresh flowers at the base of the memorial. "I'm not invisible anymore. I have a voice, a name that means something, and I used it to build something that might actually help people." Seraphina's throat tightened. "I think you'd be proud. I hope you would be." A hand touched her shoulder. Damien stood behind her, silent and steady. Seraphina stood, leaned back against him. "Do you think the people we've killed haunt us? Probably. But I think the people we've saved balance it out. Does it really work that way?"
"I don't know, but it's what I tell myself so I can sleep at night." They stood together in the cemetery, two people shaped by violence into something that almost resembled whole. "The Foundation's annual gala is next month," Seraphina said. "We need to finalize the guest list. No one from your father's old social circle, I assume." "God, no. New money. People who actually care about the cause instead of just wanting to be seen." "Good. I'll have Catherine handle security. After what happened at the Blackthorn Gala, we're not taking chances." Seraphina smiled despite herself. "That was where it started. You walking down those stairs, everyone going silent. I was there to disrupt Roland's deal with Torres. I had no idea you'd be there." "Fate? Coincidence?" Damien paused. "Or maybe something else. I don't know what to call it." "How about this?" Seraphina turned to face him. "Call it the moment two people found each other in the middle of someone else's war and decided to start their own." "That works." He kissed her there in the cemetery, surrounded by memorials to the dead, while the living city hummed on beyond the iron gates. When they finally left, Seraphina looked back once at her mother's memorial. The flowers she'd placed were already wilting in the afternoon sun, but the inscription remained, carved deep and permanent. She fought for what mattered. So would Seraphina, for the rest of her life. The Blackthorn Foundation Gala had been rebuilt from its ashes under new management. Seraphina walked into the ballroom 2 years after that first night and barely recognized it. Different chandeliers, different faces, different purpose. This gala raised money for the Mercer Foundation. Every dollar would go to women who needed an escape route from monsters. She wore emerald silk this time. Not to disappear, but to be seen. Damien stood beside her in a tailored suit, his hand at the small of her back. His presence a promise that no one would corner her, no one would touch her, no one would ever make her feel like prey again. The room went quiet when they entered, but not because people were scandalized, because they recognized power when they saw it. "Ms. Vale," someone said, a reporter, microphone extended. "Can you comment on the rumors that you're expanding the foundation internationally?" "We're opening branches in 6 countries next year," Seraphina said smoothly. "Wherever women need protection from people who think they can be owned, we'll be there." "And the allegations that the foundation is connected to the disappearance of several known trafficking figures?" Damien smiled. It was his cold smile, the one that made smart people back away. Sounds like someone's doing important work. You should probably ask them about it. The reporter retreated. Seraphina moved through the ballroom, shaking hands, accepting donations, telling her story to anyone who asked. Not the sanitized version. The real one. The bastard daughter, the failed transaction, the woman who'd learned to pull a trigger. People listened. Some were horrified. Others inspired. A few saw her as a cautionary tale. She didn't care. She wasn't here for their approval. Halfway through the night, Catherine appeared at her elbow. We have a situation. What kind? The kind where a man claiming to be Vicente Torres's cousin just tried to enter through the service entrance with a knife. Seraphina's blood chilled. Where is he now? Unconscious in a loading dock. My team's handling it, but Vale... Catherine's expression was grim. This is the third attempt in 6 months. Torres's family isn't letting this go. Then neither are we. Seraphina looked across the ballroom and found Damien in conversation with a politician. Their eyes met. He excused himself immediately and crossed to her. Problem? Catherine explained. Damien's expression went flat and dangerous. I'll handle it. How? Seraphina asked. The way I handle everything that threatens you. He kissed her forehead. Stay at the gala. Smile. Charm donors. Let them see the woman who survived. Damien, I know what I'm doing. He left with Catherine, moving toward the exit with purpose. Seraphina stood alone in the ballroom, the same ballroom where she'd been invisible 2 years ago, and made a decision. She followed them. She caught up in the loading dock. The man Catherine's team had subdued was awake now, zip-tied to a chair, bleeding from a split lip. He looked up when Seraphina entered and spat blood. Puta, he snarled. You killed Cristobal, Vicente, my family. You think you can just walk away?
Seraphina looked at him. Really looked. He was young, mid-20s maybe, scared beneath the bravado, someone who'd been sent to settle a debt he barely understood. Who sent you? She asked. No one sends me. I came for honor. Honor? Seraphina crouched in front of him. Your family trafficked women, sold children, destroyed thousands of lives. What honor was there in that? My family was powerful. You're nothing. A whore's daughter playing at being important.
Damien moved. Catherine caught his arm. Seraphina held up a hand. It's fine. She stood, looked at the man for a long moment. Then she turned to Catherine. Let him go. Everyone stared at her. Let him go, she repeated. Cut the zip ties. Give him cab fare. Send him back to whatever hole he crawled out of. Vale, Damien started. If we kill him, 10 more will come. That's how blood feuds work. Seraphina looked at the man directly. But if we let him go, if we show him that his family's power died with Torres and all that's left is scared kids trying to reclaim something that never belonged to them in the first place, maybe he goes home. Maybe he tells the others it's over. And if he doesn't, Catherine asked, then we deal with it when it happens. But I'm not starting an endless cycle of revenge. That's what destroyed my father. I won't let it destroy me. Silence. Then Damien nodded. Do it. Catherine cut the zip ties. The man rubbed his wrists, staring at Seraphina like she'd grown a second head. You're letting me go? I'm giving you a choice, Seraphina said. Walk away. Tell whoever sent you that the war is over. Or come back and I promise you won't leave alive next time. The man stood slowly, looked at Damien, at Catherine, at the guards flanking the loading dock. Then he ran. They watched him disappear into the night. That was either the smartest thing you've ever done or the stupidest, Catherine said finally. We'll find out. Seraphina turned back toward the ballroom. Come on, we have a gala to finish. Bought. The night ended with speeches and champagne and $12 million raised. Seraphina stood at the podium and looked out at 300 people who'd come because they believed in the foundation, because they'd heard her story and decided it mattered. 2 years ago, she said, her voice carrying across the ballroom, I stood in this room and no one saw me. I was invisible, disposable, a mistake someone wanted erased. The crowd was silent. Tonight, I stand here because I refuse to stay invisible, because I learned that being seen is dangerous and necessary, and the only way to survive in a world that wants to pretend people like me don't exist. She paused. The Mercer Foundation exists for every woman who's been told she doesn't matter, who's been sold, silenced, erased. We exist to say, you matter, you have value, and we will fight to keep you safe. Applause erupted. Seraphina stepped away from the podium and found Damien waiting at the edge of the crowd. He pulled her close, kissed her temple. Your mother would be proud, he said quietly. I hope so. They left the gala together as dawn broke over the city. The streets were empty and quiet. Somewhere the world was waking up to news of the Foundation's success. Somewhere, women were finding the courage to leave situations that were killing them. And somewhere, Seraphina's father was waking up in a prison cell, his empire gone, his name synonymous with corruption. She'd won. Not the way she'd expected, not cleanly or simply, but completely. What now? Damien asked as they walked toward the car. Seraphina looked up at the sky, pale and endless and full of possibility. Now we keep going, she said. We build, we fight, we survive. Together? Together. They drove away from the ballroom, away from the ghosts of the past, toward whatever came next. And for the first time in her life, Seraphina Vale, daughter of Elena Mercer, survivor of monsters, builder of sanctuaries, wasn't afraid of the future. She'd burned through the darkness and found light on the other side, and she would never be invisible again.